Good evening. Well, feels like only yesterday that I was here because I was. I hope some people were able to get along to the charity walk for veteran Alfie, D-Day veteran Alfie that I talked about on the channel yesterday. That was taking place in Wales today. Just want to extend my best wishes to everyone who took part, and also to the veteran himself, Alfie, who is 98 years old. And he is a veteran from the 6th Airborne Division, took part in the jump into Normandy on the 6th of June, was wounded in the cheek several days later, and he's still alive and still going strong. Interesting then that purely by coincidence, I had scheduled to do an in-depth review and discussion of probably one of my favorite historical movies, certainly the first historical film on World War II that I ever saw as a child at the wee age of about 5 or 6. And I tape recorded it, and I used to listen to it on my audio tapes. Now I've got one of my dearest friends coming in to talk about the film with me today. That's RrrrRmmmmm from Positive Fandom, who has a channel of her own. You can see all the details of it down there, links and so on. Please do give her a subscribe. And she does like a weekly update of TV culture and that sort of thing on a Sunday. Without any further ado, there you are.
Hello, Lance. How are you?
You haven't got your fan blowing your wind in a sort of film-like fashion today.
I have it on, but it's blocked by my computer, so you're not going to see my hair blowing right now. But it is actually on. It's.
Is it still warm there?
No.
It's cold here. I had to wear socks for the first time today. I'm very upset. First time since May. Since May. So, have you seen The Longest Day before?
I have seen this film before, Lance. Yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of going to be a sort of watch party. I'm going to run the film, just aware that it is 3 hours long, so it's quite a long movie. Good to see a few of the regulars are in the chat. Keith is here. David Macy's here. So Clueless is here. Lovely to see you all. And there's some other people watching as well. So I am going to run the film, but I've got both of my copies of it here. I've also got a VHS version of The Longest Day in color.
Wow.
So I've got a colorized version of it. There's the Blu-ray and the anniversary DVD special edition as well. And one of the things I don't have, which I'm still after, if anybody knows a version of it that exists that you can buy, is I want to get the all English language version where all of the actors, including the French and the Germans, all speak in English. One of the reasons I want to get that version is because it's not a redubbed version. All of those scenes were shot twice. And because they were shot twice, the English version is slightly different, and the acting style is slightly different, and also the dialogue is slightly different in the English versions of the scene. And I have seen that version. In fact, it was the one I used to have on audio recording, which I long since got rid of. I wish I still had it, but I've never seen it since. It tended to get screened in the TV in Western countries in sort of the 70s. And then when they started releasing it on DVD and Blu-ray and things, it was always everyone speaking in their own language, which, by the way, is as it should be. But I just would like to have a copy of the other version and see it again, being a collector of these things. So I'm going to play the film, but we're going to talk a lot during it rather than kind of watch it. And I may pause it occasionally and put an image up on screen, so the running time will be a little bit haphazard, so to speak. Now I can't share screen and put it up on screen, can I? Because if I do, the video will get ratioed and taken down, right?
Yeah, that is true. You can't play it unless you have permission to do it,
even without the sound on. So, but I can show quick clips, like 2 or 3 seconds, I think. So isn't it like up to 6 seconds or something?
Yeah, right? I think so. Yes, but don't play the sound.
No, well, I don't think I've figured out how to share something and share the sound at the same time. But just in case, I'm going to mute it all the same. And there's a couple of different versions of this film that exist as well. There's some versions that don't have some of the French scenes in, and I don't know if that was just edited for television running time or what. But some of the VHS versions of the film that exist also have some missing scenes. So, all right. So I'm going to just press play on it, but we'll carry on talking about it. So I'm just going to set my counter to just before it starts, as it were. And it is running now. And my counter, this is actually my Blu-ray that's playing, and it's counting down backwards. So it's currently at 2:58 and 5 seconds, and the actual film hasn't started yet. That's because I've muted it now. It's starting now, the helmet. So when did you first see this?
Maybe 20 years ago. I first 20 or 25 years ago when I first started watching Turner Classics, when it became available in the 90s, was the first time that I ever watched this film.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't at the cinema.
No, it wasn't.
So, I mean, it's an ensemble piece with a huge number of characters. There's something like almost nearly 100 speaking roles. Opens with that very iconic shot of the helmet on the beach, which
Yes.
is a really strong image. And then you immediately cut into, you've got this drumming music. I don't know if you know, but the music's done by Maurice Jarre, who did a number of French soundtracks. There's not a lot of instrumental music in the film. Almost none, apart from the boom, 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 you know, and that kind of thing. And the rest of it's all really without music. And the main reason for that is because Daryl F Zanucks, who produced the film, wanted it to feel like a documentary. So he was trying to keep it as unstylized as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go into this montage, which lasts for a good long while. And introduces us to a huge number of characters. The guy who's running, who gets shot down, that's supposed to be a French resistance person getting killed deliberately with fake documents to mislead the Germans about the invasion. That's one of the first things we see. Then we cut to the soon-to-be Goldfinger Bond villain taking the milk to the water to the people in the bunkers. And then we cut to von Rundstedt, who's in charge of the defenses of the West. And then we cut to German soldiers at Pegasus Bridge and the fantastically attractive Janine Boutard of the French resistance, who's played by, I want to get her name right, it's Irene Demick, I think. Irina Demick. And she was actually Daryl F Zanucks' mistress. I don't know if you know that. Did you know?
He reminds me of Sophia Loren.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how much other stuff she did. It's sad that I think she passed away relatively young, but she was Zanucks' mistress even before he started making The Longest Day. And how the film came about was it was originally being produced by a French filmmaker called Raoul Levy, who planned to film it in France, England, and Elstree Studios in the UK. He got the rights to the book. Oh, I should have got the book because it's in my other room, for $100,000, which is a huge sum of money back then, which was written by Cornelius Ryan. And then Cornelius Ryan, in addition to the option, got paid another $35,000 to write the script. But then the financing fell apart, and that's when Zanuck came on board. He got interested in it. I do like the scene with the French priest in the church where he's talking about, you know, each man will have to answer to God, and he kind of looks pointedly at the German officer sitting in the church. That's a really good scene. And then we have the scene with Werner Pluskat in Normandy with his dog. That bunker is still there. It's about to fall into the sea, but you can go and visit it. You used to be able to go inside it. I don't know whether it's still safe enough to do that. And I may well have some pictures of that I can bring up at some stage. Now, there's this second picture of this bunker on this beach where they've got a load of defenses and stuff, and then you have Rommel talking about building the defenses. All of that footage with those actors was shot in a studio in Paris, and they're actually in front of a projected screen there, which you can kind of tell that really. But the beach behind them, it's difficult to know whether there's two beaches that they used for the invasion, and neither of them are in Normandy. One of them's in Corsica, and the other one is in near Rochelle, in Brittany, in France. And I'm gonna show those in a second. And what they did was they used one for all of the shots of the invasion with all the landing barges and stuff coming in, because the water there was very shallow and it was a lot safer, and that was the beach in Corsica. But you can tell when it's the shots of the Corsica beach because you can see the mountains in the background in the distance, and of course there's no mountains in Normandy like that. This beach here is the one near Rochelle because it hasn't got the mountains in the background. And that's the beach that they used for all the shots of people once they were on the beach, and with the bunkers and trying to get the explosives in the bunkers and all that kind of stuff, because that beach had two prominent bunkers that were still there. So they were just able to use those and they didn't have to build any. I think this is, we've got a scene coming up with another Bond villain. Who played the Bond villain in The Spy Who Loved Me. And then we have the scenes with the Germans listening into the messages for the French resistance. All of these interiors were shot at Boulogne Studios, which are not located in Boulogne. They're just called that, and they're located in France, in Paris, in France, sorry. Oh, Darth Plato's here. Sorry, I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat. I'm going to show you the two beaches. Actually, I'll do that now. So we've actually got some stuff on the screen. So I don't want to pause the film just yet. I have got a whole load of tabs open, by the way, like absolutely tons of. So let me get the first beach one ready. Yeah, there it is. Let's just move that. So the one that we just saw is on this island west of the French coast of the port of Rochelle, and it's here. And if you look, the bunker that the German actors were standing on was actually this one, and it's still there. And you've got another one that's very intact that's used later in the background for the Americans when they're on Omaha Beach. Now, this beach was mainly used for Omaha. There's another beach further along on the island that was used for the British. And actually, if I show you this still, which is a little bit pixelated, but if you look, that's that bunker in the top corner there, look. So the one that extends out with the wall into the beach, that's that one right there. And again, you can tell that this is not the beach in Corsica because of the extended piece of land that comes up there, which matches up with the coastline of the island, which is called something like Ile de Roule. It's got an unusual name. We have the scene just flashing back to the film for a second. Rommel gets the weather report and decides, because it's his wife's birthday, he's going to go back to Germany and visit Hitler and try and beg for more troops and for the troops to be released earlier, because the weather's supposed to be terrible, so the Allies won't invade during bad weather. So I'm just going to show the other locations that, and also where this place is. So if I zoom right out, this island, as you can see, this is La Rochelle, where there's a big German submarine base there that was used for the Raiders of the Lost Ark film, just out of interest. And then the British, some of the British beach stuff was actually filmed here. And this is much more built up than it would have been back then. Because don't forget, the film was shot in 1962. But the scene where the drunken Frenchman comes along with the bicycle and the stuff with Sean Connery was actually all filmed here on this beach here. And they filmed it on a different beach, so it looked different from the American Omaha beach. And they picked this one that was over here because it had high bluffs immediately behind. So
and Darth Vader, we're about 10 minutes into the film.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's right, just over 10. I'm now on the scene where it's pouring down with rain in the UK, and we're looking at all the Allied encampments. And by the way, a lot of these encampment scenes were actually filmed in Corsica, just behind the beach where the invasion was, ironically. And you can actually see, if you look in some of the shots, you can see some bits and pieces of terrain that don't look quite right occasionally. So we get introduced to a whole plethora of American and English characters, less so the French, no Canadians. Canadians are very, very briefly seen in the film, but everybody's complaining that the weather's terrible and they just want to get on with the invasion. And there's a lot of English character actors in these scenes who went on to be quite prominent names in British television, including the likes of Kenneth More, and of course there's a very, very young Sean Connery. I'll come back to him in a second. But yeah, so that's where that stuff was shot. So I'll take that down now. One of the stuff that was filmed on board ships, this isn't a million miles away from you, a lot of the stuff on the American naval ships was filmed on the USS Little Rock, which is now a museum in Buffalo. And that's it right there. So we're going to see that in a little bit. I was quite surprised to find that was still intact and you could still go and visit it. So there's a scene here with Roddy McDowall, who's sort of sitting in a jeep on board a ship because all the soldiers have already been. A lot of them have already been. They've embarked on board the ships because they have to embark at least 24 hours before, because it takes so long to get everybody on board. And then they were keeping them on for like 2 days while they were waiting for the yes or the no. And everybody was seasick everywhere. Roddy McDowall was filming Cleopatra along with Richard Burton when this film was being made. And they got their agents to get in touch with Zanuck, and they begged him for parts because they were so bored. And they've paid for their own airfares to actually come to the set and shot their scenes within a couple of days. So just looking at some of the cast, that's very young Sean Connery. Yeah, you might not know this, but that's Norman Rossington standing to his left, who is a well-known British comedian, but he is also Nicely Johnson in Guys and Dolls. So not a lot of people have would know that. Sal Mineo and Richard Beamer, who both play soldiers with, I think it's the 82nd Airborne, seen here. Richard Beamer is actually still alive and has written a crazy autobiography called What Happened to Richard Beamer. Sal Mineo, I only found this out today. he was killed in a mugging when he was 37 years old in LA when he got out of his car coming back from a rehearsal. So he died in I think it was 1993. And it's really weird because in The Longest Day, he's one of the first paratroopers to get killed, and he gets shot in the stomach, and he died of a stomach wound, which I just thought that was quite surreal. And we're introduced to Benjamin Vandervoot, who's one of the commanders of the 101st Airborne, or is he with the 82nd? I forget. I think he might be with the 82nd. Sorry, he's with the 82nd. That's right, because he's got that line. You're in the 82nd now, and all the actors on the film were paid $25,000, except for John Wayne, who was paid $250,000. So John Wayne got paid much more, much higher than anyone else. Here he is in this shot, and the reason for that was because Zanuck made a disparaging remark about his Alamo film, so he decided to make him pay for making that remark by saying he wouldn't come onto the film for less than $250,000, and that's what he got paid, which was an extraordinary sum of money for an actor in 1962. Then we get introduced to Norm Coulter, very famous general of the 29th Infantry, if I remember rightly, and his assistant division commander. I need to remember the name of this actor. He is played by
Robert Mitchum.
Is it Rob? Well, I know Robert Mitchum. It's the guy with the blonde hair. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, okay.
He's a pretty well-known actor as well. Eddie Albert, of course it is. Eddie Albert, because Eddie Albert was the prison warden in Mean Machine with Burt Reynolds. And we kind of cut back to like all the sort of the regular infantrymen, and everybody's gambling their money because there's really nothing else for them to do while they're waiting for the green light to go. And I think these guys are supposed to be on board a ship. This scene in this huge barracks where the camera's panning back and it's getting bigger and bigger with all the bunk beds and everything. This was shot again in the Boulogne studios in Paris. And I actually found some shots of this set. And there's Richard Beamer playing rolling dice, playing craps and winning absolutely tons of money. Along with Red Buttons to his right, my left. Red Buttons lives to a ripe old age. He only passed away a few years ago, I think. So we can get a picture of him. So you can see, look, this scene here with the blue screen behind it. Even back then, they were doing back projection and stuff. That's that same bunker that I just showed you on the map. So that's not a set. That's really there. Just seeing if we can get a still of Red Buttons here. There's Eddie Albert. Oh, well, we'll come back to that. So yeah, Beamer's won like an absolutely huge stack of money, and ultimately he decides to go back and gamble it all again. And yeah, the guy who's asking him what he's going to do with the money again is another. Yeah, these are all paratroopers. That's right. These are all paratroopers with, I think, with the 82nd Airborne. Because Red Buttons is playing John Steele, who's a real life character, who got hung up on a church steeple, which of course we're going to see later. Yeah, Darth Plato rightly pointing out there was one day delayed due to weather. And in fact, there's been a play about that called Pressure, as in referring to air pressure, but also the pressure of the decision, which is about the decision to go. It was on the London stage a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, I think just before the pandemic it was on. It's a shame Richard Beamer's acting career was not more successful, because I thought he was absolutely fantastic in this. But apparently his autobiography is quite zany. You can order it on Amazon. It's called What Happened to Richard Beamer or Bamer. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, so I might be saying that incorrectly. Just going to go through. Now, I went to Normandy back in 2011, and I've been there 5 times since. But the first time I went, I did a really good tour organised by my friend Mark Simonich, who designs lots of board games, and he's done one on Normandy. So we got to see all the great locations and stuff like that. So we saw loads of stuff that wasn't used in the film, because some of it wasn't even uncovered in '62. Like the Marcouf battery is now an absolutely superb museum. Here's one of the bunkers from that. But back in '62, these were all completely overgrown and covered in shrubs and trees and things, and hadn't been tended to since the war, so you couldn't really access them properly. But now that's a really fantastic museum. That one took a direct bomb hit from a B-17 on D-Day, so that's why it's all crushed in. There are some bunkers like that in the movie, but not that particular one, because they didn't use that location. But they did use the battery at a place called Long-sur-Mer, and you will actually see that in the film, but they used it at night, and it doubled for a different location, and that was just to keep filming close together, because the place that you saw earlier, the bunker that was on the coast, is at that same place. It's the control bunker. I'm trying to find the best picture I've got of that. So we've got Richard Burton now, with another actor who would appear with him also in Where Eagles Dare, and they're talking about their friend who's been shot down, and unfortunately hasn't made it back, which just leaves the two of them as the original flyboys from the Battle of Britain 1940. This is the location that is used in the film, and there's me on the gun. There are 3 or 4 of these in a line, and they've still got the original guns in place, and these are located right round, literally just 20 meters back from the coast, back from the bunker that you saw earlier in the film, and we're gonna see that bunker again. So we're about we're about 26 minutes in, give or take. What you got on your time there?
I have to get my remote. I'm at 24 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. So there's another shot of that same location, and when you see it in the movie, you'll see that they added a load more guns to it, and then on top of each one of these, they put an anti-aircraft battery as well. So they dressed it. There's camouflage nets over the guns, and when it comes up in the movie, it's listed as a location of south of Caen, and those are it's doubling for a location south of the city of Caen, which was one of the objectives to be reached on D-Day. It sadly was not reached, and in fact that city would not come under Allied control for quite some time, not until the end of July, I think. So that's them. That's those. They're great. You can go and visit those. I don't think there's a cost to visit those. I think you can go and see those for free, or at least you could in 2011. Could be that some Frenchman has now got a little sign up and may well be charging money. Who knows? But there's so many museums in Normandy now, and they're extremely well preserved. So the scene that's coming up now is Benjamin van der Voort, John Wayne, protesting about the location of his drop zones, and demonstrating that all they need to General Gavin, all that needs to happen is that they need to be blown off course a little bit, and they're either going to end up in the swamp area or the sea or on top of a whole load of Germans. And then, of course, he is told that the chances are that the operation is going to be on tonight. So then he says, "Oh, forget about it. Ignore my protests. Let's go. Let's go." You know, this still here, which is of the British commandos landing at Sword Beach, was actually the cover for the original UK VHS release, which misleadingly gave the impression that the film was actually filmed in color when it was not. It was filmed in black and white. The reason it was filmed in black and white, even though color was available, was because Daryl Zanucks was very keen for it to feel very real, and he wanted to be able to mix in some stock footage from the war itself. And there's about 15 or 20 clips, I think, mostly near the beginning, of actual footage. And the style of the film does emulate a documentary to some degree. That's why there isn't much of a soundtrack in the movie. I think that's Robert Wagner on the fourth on the left there. And that's Paul Anka, the short man in third along. That's singer Paul Anka, who is still alive and whom I tried to get to come on this stream. Believe it or not. So now we cut to the meteorological department in the UK, and you see John Stagg having his coffee, and the play that I mentioned, which was called Pressure, as I said, was all about John Stagg making this decision. And it was written by an actor called, I think his name's Haig. He was in Four Weddings and a Funeral. And I'll see if I can get an image up of the actual play. Seemed to be quite well received. Yeah, here we go. David Haig, that's right. So yeah, this is a still from the play itself, which covered this very topic about debating about the weather. So there you go, that's David Haig. Then we cut to the Germans again. The Germans get a lot of screen time in this movie, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the production of the film coincided with the Cold War escalating and the Berlin Wall being built and all of these kinds of things, and then the Berlin airlift taking place. So they had seconded all these American extras who were actually from the army to be in the movie. And then because all this stuff was kicking off in Berlin, a whole load of them got taken off the film again, because there were complaints that, you know, our soldiers really shouldn't be being deployed for a movie. They should be ready to be in Berlin and sort things out. Yeah, Darth Plato, I think that's command. I think it is 4-5 Commando under Lovett Lord Lovat Scamandros, whose job it was to relieve Pegasus Bridge. This actor who's playing the German pilot is a fantastic actor, and he's complaining about the fact that his planes have been reduced. They're too far from the coast to do any good. And there's only him and one other guy. And the Luftwaffe was in a terrible state by 1944, and was really only able to offer a token resistance. Most of their veteran pilots were dead, either killed over the Battle of Britain or killed in Russia by 1944. So the pilots that they did have, the majority of them were not very experienced. And by now as well, the Allied planes were on par with the German, if not better. So wasn't so good for them. Let's I'll get the stills back up for a second. There's a lot of stills on this location, incidentally, which is the casino at Ouistreham, is one of the bits in the film that's has to be said is a load of bullshit. The strong point at Ouistreham was actually the casino was demolished by Allied artillery, not on D-Day. It was destroyed sometime before that, because they wanted to take it out because they knew it had been heavily fortified and it was a major beach obstacle. But the Germans built a strong point on what was the foundations of the basement. So it wasn't a particularly high building. This is a camera shot from the casino building, which I've actually got a model of next door. I might grab that at some point actually and bring it in. Bit of show and tell. And this was actually built in the car park at Port-en-Bassin. And that building, the damaged building, was actually there, damaged from the war, and then it was demolished during filming and they took it down. And that is now the site of the centre of tourism for Port-en-Bassin. There it is. And if you look up on the hill, you're going to see this castle later. And I only realized that was that location because we stopped in that car park for lunch. I turned around and looked up the hill and I went, I know this angle. And you can see that those houses on the top at the left with the road going up there, that's the same houses on that street right there. Look, see? So that's where Ouistreham was filmed, which we'll see in the film a bit later. Now we've got General Marks, who's talking about the invasion in the scene I'm watching now, which is about 35 minutes in, 34. And he's talking about what he would do and where he would invade, because everybody was expecting the invasion to come in Calais, and he said he would invade in Normandy because people wouldn't expect it. And on the night of the invasion, loads of people had gone for a night out in Reims, ostensibly to do war games, to war game the invasion of France. But really, they probably just all went out to get pissed. And now we cut to the Allied headquarters, and Eisenhower's got to make the decision. It has to be said that all the actors in this scene really look like their real life counterparts. And the actor playing Eisenhower is not an actor. And somebody just happened to see him and realized that he was an absolute dead ringer for Eisenhower. So they asked him if he would play the role. In fact, I might show this quickly. So I want to show people how much he looks like him. And see if I can get a good freeze here. And he agreed. He was a little bit nervous because he'd never done any acting before, not even so much as a amateur dramatics film. But he agreed. And what they did was they dubbed his voice with an experienced actor. I didn't know that his voice was dubbed until today, actually. So there he is there on the left. And the actor who plays Montgomery in this scene, also incredibly good lookalike for him. I'll take that down so I can press play on that again. Skip that. So the decision is made, we're on, and we cut immediately to John Wayne being informed. He's kind of hanging out in a hangar. And so he's immediately racing out to go and tell his men. I've actually got a good shot of him here with one of his battalion commanders, one of his company commanders, Lieutenant Sheen, I believe it's the character name. Then we have the 29th Infantry being told there a go. So Norm Coulter finds out. Next stop, Normandy. We're on our way. It's all of this compilation of all these scenes are great. We now get Lord Lovat being informed, British Special Service Brigade. The actor who played him is a fantastic actor. I don't know if we've got a still of him. There's Richard Burton, another fantastic actor. And that's the French commandos. See who we've got here. And then there's a brief scene where the Pathfinders are mentioned, and rightly so, because they are the first people to go into Normandy. There was also a number of SAS dropped in early on. Right, that beach there, that's the beach in Corsica. And you can tell because you can see the mountains are in the background. And in the foreground of this still, you can see all the crew and also some civilians that just happen to be watching. What's notable about the beach, if you look at it, is you can see there's almost no bunkers on it at all, because that beach doesn't actually have any. They probably would have built a few little bits and pieces, but it hasn't got any actual ones left over from the war because there weren't any built there.
And to answer your question, Darth Plato, yes, I do like this film very much. As I've said before, I saw the film in 1994, around that time, and it's been shown on Turner Classics quite a few times. So it's great to see the film again. And I do like to watch a lot of these films with other people to hear their opinions about what they loved about the film. So it is great to be able to do something like this with Lance tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. Stubble McShave, which is a fantastic name, says John Wayne fell out of place and I don't know anything about his real life counterpart. You're absolutely right. I mean, John Wayne was 44 when he shot this movie, and the character he was playing was only 27. So he was completely miscast, and there were a number of other people up for the role. But at the time, John Wayne was the biggest name. If you had him in a movie, it was, you know, a guarantee of a certain number of ticket sales. And so Daryl F Zanucks held out for him, and he agreed to pay his fee, which was an exorbitant fee. There's an interesting scene here where John Wayne briefs his men, and again, this is in the studio in Paris, in the Boulogne studios, and he's actually I've got some pictures actually of this. Let's get them up. So this is the Boulogne studios right here, and you can see John Wayne on the set here in the studio, and there's no pictures. They built a massive interior set for a lot of the night scenes. All the night scenes you see in the swamp, and there's a scene with this wall and stuff like that. That's all actually an interior set, because they wanted to be able to control the lighting. But the shot that's up right now with the big briefing with where the crickets are mentioned and Red Buttons has a couple of lines, loud and clear, sir. There's a big glider in the background, and that's actually a British glider, and the Americans didn't use those. And I think it's the same glider that they built for the Pegasus Bridge scene, which is coming up soon, and they just grabbed it and decided to put it in the background for production value, which is what you do with that kind of thing. There's some filming on Point de Hoc. These behind the scenes stills are great. I haven't seen many of these before, actually, because there were several scenes that were shot in the actual location, and Pegasus Bridge was one of them. That's coming up soon. So we're now cutting to the French and other people listening into their radio, and suddenly we get the John has a long moustache message, and that was a bit of a running joke at school. Everybody you'd be playing a game of Secret Agent or something, and suddenly somebody would say John has a long moustache, and it would be the code word for whatever was happening in the game, and it was a nod to this film. And I do love this scene because this Frenchman gets up and he starts shouting excitedly, John has a long moustache, and he puts his fireman helmet on for no reason because he's obviously a reserve fireman, and like thanks his wife and then rushes out the door, and she looks confused because she hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. She tries his soup to see if his soup has sent him mad. It's a very funny scene. There were 4 directors on this film, by the way. You had Ken Anakin, who also shot the Swiss Family Robinson Disney film, which I'm sure you must have seen that one. You ever see Swiss Family Robinson? Yeah. And then
sure.
And then he also directed the Battle of the Bulge movie. You had a German director, Gerd Oswald, a Swiss-Austrian director, Bernhard Wicki, and then a Hungarian-American director, Andrew Morton, who was a very well-known second unit action director. And one of the most famous things he directed was he was the unit that directed the chariot race in Ben-Hur. So all the chariot action was all directed by Andrew Morton. He was also second unit on Kelly's Heroes, and he was second unit on Day of the Jackal. But he did also direct several films. He directed the 1953 version of King Solomon's Mines, and he directed the original version of The Thin Red Line in 1962. So you had 4 very experienced directors handling a country each, effectively. One person did Germany, another person did France, another person did America, another person did English scenes. And then you had, on top of them, you had 6 very experienced directors of photography, all of whom have done massive movies as well. So it was a very experienced crew. And there were 31 locations for the film altogether. And 3 of the original locations were used. Northern English Bastard, what a great name, says awesome movie, a much better D-Day movie than Saving Private Ryan, in my opinion. I mean, it's a very different film, made at a different time. Saving Private Ryan is D-Day in a microcosm told from the story of the point of view of one platoon. This is the whole of D-Day told from multiple perspectives on a grand epic scale. It's a completely different kind of movie. Saving Private Ryan got the realism for the blood and the gore correct. So we got this scene where the German generals are all playing cards, and this man comes rushing in, and this did actually happen. This did happen. He came rushing in because they'd broken the code, and they knew the Germans had the German code breakers knew when they got the second part of the message that they'd broken that the invasion would happen within 24 hours. But when the guy came and told the German generals this, he didn't really take it that seriously. But all he did was he put the 7th Army on full alert, and that army was the one that was in the Pas de Calais, or the Bay of Calais, and that's where all the Germans always thought the invasion was going to come. So they put the wrong army on alert. Didn't do anything for the soldiers in Normandy. Then the footage when it cuts to the shot of all the ships on their way to Normandy, except for the scene with the 4 planes flying over the head, and there you can see the USS Little Rock. That it's in that shot. that footage was shot for the film, so they had about 5 or 6 ships. But when you get the wide shots with like dozens of ships, that's footage from the actual invasion fleet. We've got Rod Steiger's cameo coming up now, where he's got this little speech, and one of the few scenes with a bit of music in it. Again, Maurice Jarre, the composer. And he's got a nice little speech, nice little scene, and that's it. He just came and did one day, and he was gone. And he would later play Napoleon in the Waterloo. Did you do a watch party of Waterloo recently, or am I dreaming that?
We did a watch party of the miniseries of Napoleon and Josephine. It was a made for television movie in 3 parts. That's what we did recently.
Was that the French TV series? Was it French production?
No.
Okay, no, I saw that recently. It was good. You then get a shot of the air fleet going over the actual guys in their boats, and that's an effect shot. I don't know how they did that. This is where we cut to Jeffrey Hunter, who of course was originally the captain of the pilot for Star Trek. I don't know the year that the pilot for Star Trek was filmed, but somebody in chat will know that. That's actually a shot of Daryl Zanuck, who was never seen without a cigar, by the way. And they had multiple units filming these scenes at the same time. And Daryl Zanuck had a helicopter allocated to him, and he would fly from one set to the other, sometimes on the same day, to see how it was all progressing. I'm trying to find a shot of Jeffrey Hunter here. There's Robert Wagner and Paul Anka. There was about 3 American singers were on this movie. That's Daryl Zanuck again, Paul Anka again. That's Porton Bassin again. And that's at the bottom of Pointe du Hoc. That's at the top of Pointe du Hoc. That's the real Commander Major John Howard on the right, and Richard Todd, who's playing him second in, holding the Sten gun. Richard Todd was actually in 7th Parachute Battalion, and he landed on D-Day, and he's wearing his actual beret that he wore on D-Day on his head, but he changed the insignia for the correct unit. Ox and Bucks Light Infantry as opposed to 7th Parachute Battalion. And then that's the real Lord Lovat with Peter Lawford, who played him. I think they really got the casting right on that, because if you look at Peter Lawford on the far left and Lord Lovat, look, it could be his dad, really do look alike. So it's General Marx's birthday in the film now, and they're kind of cutting the cake, and we hear the dum 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 dum, which is one of the things from the movie I always remember. I listened to this movie on audio tape like so many times. It was on like 2 D90 tapes, and I could probably quote the dialogue for most of the scenes, because I must have played it hundreds of times. I used to have it on my Walkman as well sometimes. So I don't know how they did that shot with all the planes, but I'm going to guess that that's probably images painted on glass, which is moving, and then filmed several plates of them together at different distances, because that's how they did a lot of the planes in Bridge Too Far. Now we've got some model work and the 3 gliders approaching Pegasus Bridge. This is interesting for me because this was part of the film that stuck in my head. I immediately kind of went and built Pegasus Bridge out of Lego and got my Airfix soldiers out, and this was the first action on D-Day. And of course, I would later try and make a film about this. I went to the location many times, both the actual bridge and the one in the museum. I'll get the actual bridge up on Google quickly, because the actual bridge is in the museum just behind the bridge that is there now. And the locals, when the new bridge was put in, they specifically asked for it to be exactly the same as the old one because it's so iconic. So but the canal's been widened since 1944. It used to be a lot narrower than this. So you can see the original bridge is here in the back of the museum here. This is a fantastic museum, by the way. Anybody that hasn't been, they should definitely go. And then here's the new bridge, and you can see how close the gliders landed because these are the three markers. Number 1 here, glider number 3 here, and glider number 2 here. And I mean, look how close they got to the bridge. It's incredible that they got so close. And when you think that they were towed all the way over from England at night and then released, and they had to come down the canal and then do 3 turns and then come back up parallel along it to land in the exact right place. It's nothing short of amazing, really. And I'll just show a bit of the film very quickly. And this is where they're coming in. This would have been recorded with some kind of camera hanging down from a helicopter because, of course, you didn't have, and that's model work happening right there. But I'll stop that before I get cancelled.
Pulled down. You get pulled down. You're not going to get canceled.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get pulled down either. I think I'm allowed to
get canceled. You won't get canceled.
I'm allowed to show a few seconds, though, aren't I? I believe, anyway. I hope so. So one of the things that's interesting as well is there is, if you look around on YouTube, you can see little bits of filming that they did at Pegasus Bridge, and this is like B-roll. So you can see this is later on in the movie when the reinforcements are arriving, and there's some great stuff. But again, I won't show too much of that because I don't know what the issue is. It's very, very old, so I think it's beyond copyright, those images. But I don't want to test the metal of that argument, so I'll leave that. I'll leave that footage there. Okay, we don't need to show that, do we? Yeah. So this whole sequence, and I've read all the accounts of all the men who were there, is incredibly well directed. It was directed by Ken Anakin. Now, right over the bridge on the other side of the river is Cafe Gondry, which was the first civilian house to be liberated on D-Day. And Mr. Gondry, who was still living there at the time when they filmed, they wanted to actually put German soldiers emerging from the cafe, and the Gondrys were absolutely adamant that they never allowed any German soldiers to be billeted there. And that's true. They were in trenches and another house nearby, but they were not allowed in the cafe. So when they were filming, it's quite a funny story, this. Mr. Gondry had not been paid any money to have the cafe in the shot. So he insisted on, what he did was he turned all the lights on in the cafe and put all the windows open, which was completely ruining all their shots. And all that we know is that Daryl Zanucks went and had a word with him. The shutters were closed, the lights were out, and the next day, Mr. Gondry had a brand new car. So that's a good way to appease any civilians. We cut to our French resistance people who are blowing up telegraph poles all over Normandy at this stage, because by now word's getting out that the invasion is happening. There's the real Major John Howard with the man who would play him, who was a fantastic actor. He had a really tragic life because his, I think his kids died before him. Yeah, but he was very, very proud of being involved in the operation of D-Day, and he also tried to save the original Pegasus Bridge, because for a long time it was just taken out and replaced by the new one, and it was left to rust in a field nearby. And money was raised for the memorial museum that's there now, and as I say, it's one of the best museums in Normandy. So the British carry on pushing across the bridge. Now, this fight for the bridge, by the way, was nowhere near as dramatic as this, and it was over a lot quicker. The Paras basically charged across. One of them got shot in the neck. There was a paratrooper that I interviewed who actually broke down crying, and he felt that their platoon accidentally may have shot their own guy who charged ahead of them. But I don't think so, because the doctor said that the wound was from the front and hit him in the throat from the front. So that was in the medical report from the doctor. So they may have thought that they did that in the confusion, but I don't think that they actually did do that. I think he was shot by the Germans, and he was Den Brotheridge. There was another British soldier who actually was trapped in Glider 3 that broke in half in the swamp, and he drowned, and his body wasn't found until a really long time later, and his name was something like Hansley, or so I forget now. So the Ox and Bucks light infantry have captured Pegasus Bridge with only a couple of casualties, and now they've got to hold it. What's not shown in the film is that 7th Parachute Battalion would arrive an hour later. They would cross over and occupy the village on the other side. And in the next 24 hours, they lost about 55 guys, holding off the Germans and stopping them from getting to the bridge. At this point, we cut to German sort of high command, and we're with the fantastic actor Wolfgang Priest, who would constantly be cast as German bad guys in lots of films. He was also in Hannibal Brooks with Oliver Reed, which is definitely a movie I've got to do a watch party of. I've got the DVD of that. And he's been in lots of other films as German officers and so on. But I have a feeling that he fled Germany before the war, and didn't actually take part in it. I think it's him. There's George Segal, by the way. Look at that, young George Segal. He passed away only recently, and he's also in The Longest Day. He got a really small part. Onto the posters. Let's see if I can find this German actor. Yeah, that's Wolfgang Priest. Now we cut to the various airborne forces dropping in Normandy. It's interesting because we just had a shot of British bombers there, but we've cut to the interior and we've got John Wayne and his guys, but I think they mostly dropped from Dakota aircraft, and British bombers mostly dropped the British guys on the eastern flank of the invasion, which was the 6th Airborne Division. What crisps are you snacking on there?
It's
sounds like hula hoops. Oh wow, look at that.
Harvest.
That looks far too healthy.
They're peas.
Oh my god, okay. The peas.
Yeah, it's not they're good for, it's actually good for you. It's not bad for you.
So we cut back to the Americans and the guys from the card game, and he's like, "How do you make out?" "Oh, I lost." And it's shown that the character played by Beamer he's got a crucifix which he holds on to, and it's like his lucky charm, and he tucks it back in. And Sal Moreno, who is one of the first Paras to get killed, he doesn't have a lucky charm, and he also lost in the card game. So it's almost like they're playing on the fact that he's cursed himself, you know. And then we cut back to Wolfgang Priest, and this is again like the interior of German headquarters. Now this would have all been shot in the Boulogne studio in Paris. And in fact, on this selection of photos, you can see some of these photos are actually of John Wayne at that studio having a beer and so on. But I think he did a tour of the studio in '62. There's also a picture of him here in his civvies playing a game of chess with Paul Anka, which is quite interesting. So this is the, no, I'm going to freeze this. This is the shot of that bunker that we now cut to Cannes, and they're dropping the dummies, the dummy parachutists, which were designed to distract the Germans. And there you can see the bunker with the gun pointing upwards behind. That's the one with me with the photograph that I just showed you earlier. And you can see the second one behind it. They've dressed all this other stuff. But this is said to be south of Cannes, but ironically, the sea is literally 20 meters that way. Not even that. I think this is right on the coast. But a great sort of redressing of a location and getting something out of it. And that's clever filmmaking right there. So I paused for a little bit there, so I'll skip ahead. Then we have Irene Demick picking up a supply canister. Now, these are the SAS units, some of whom were French, parachuting in to meet with the resistance to take part in espionage and sabotage operations ahead of the main invasion. So they would do things like, again, cut lines, bring in more weapons for the French resistance groups, ambush German convoys, reinforcements, blow up bridges, blow up railways, blow up telephone lines, all of that stuff. I don't know where this bridge scene is actually located. That's one location I didn't find. They're sabotaging the railway line, and one of the Germans hears and decides to go and investigate. I think this was the first time in a movie I'd ever seen someone get depicted, because I saw this, I was very young when I saw this. I must have been like 6. And I saw it 3 times in close succession, because we went on holiday to France and we were staying at someone's house, and it was showing in France in the afternoon. And I was like, oh, quid's in, you know, I can watch The Longest Day again. Fantastic. So I was very happy about that. But yeah, there's this scene where the Germans come to investigate the sabotage on the railway line, and Irene Demick goes out to distract them, which I'm sure would distract any man. And they get bumped off, as we used to say. I don't think there's any stills of this scene on here. I don't want to risk putting it up again. But now, of course, the French civilians were not allowed out at this time of night. There would have been a curfew, and they weren't also allowed anywhere without a pass. You had to stay within a certain radius of where you lived, so your papers would have your address and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, Keithy, thanks for that. Thumbs up, it's always good. I don't know who Troy Boy Salt is, but thank you for popping in. Is that a 9 out of 10 on IMDb? If so, deservedly so, in my opinion. So yeah, there's one of the soldiers goes to escort the girl back to the bridge. The other one notices the damage on the railway line and one of the French SAS guys comes up, stabs him with the knife, and we cut to this. It's very clever. We cut to a shot of the train and going the whistle in the train further up the tracks, which is bringing German reinforcements to the sector, probably from Caen. What's great about this film, though, is it was all German actors for the German parts, all French actors for the French parts, and so on. So a very, very multinational production. These are French army actually in the background there, along with the actor who played this role in this particular still that I've got up right now. So Irene Demick in action, trying to strangle this German, and they both fall in the river. I don't know if that looked like she. I don't know. I can pause that, but that looked like she really did that fall in the river. That looks like her, not a stunt woman. I don't know if it was a stunt woman, but it certainly looked like her. The German tries to drown her, and I remember when I was watching this for the first time, I was like, no, because she looked a little bit like my mum. My mum looked a little bit like her. So, you don't want to see your mum get killed on telly, do you?
No.
This scene with the train is extremely well handled because it's not a model or anything. It's a full-size train. They really did blow it off the tracks. It comes off the tracks, and they blew up a load of carriages, and it's a very, very effective scene. And lots of Germans jumping out and on fire, and not good for them. Now we cut back to General Marks, and he's just about to go out or retire for the evening, and then hears about the report of dummy paratroopers being dropped. The real dummy paratroopers were not as sophisticated as the ones in the film. They didn't look quite as good, and actually normally there'd be one or two guys dropping with them, and they dropped this sounds crazier than it sounds true. They dropped with gramophones with a pre-recorded sound record with sound effects recorded on it of gunfire, and they would play it behind the area where the dummies were dropped. So you'd have all this action of machine guns and so on, just to make it a bit more realistic. They weren't quite as effective as the ones shown in the film, nor did they look as real. So I'm on the scene where they're examining the dummy paratrooper now. Are you on the same one?
I am at 1 hour and 10 minutes.
What scene you got on right now?
They just brought the dummy into the room.
Yeah, okay. So we're on I think I might be a few seconds ahead of you. So he then calls Wolfgang Priest's character, and he's like, dummy paratroopen. So it was funny because I had the English recording of this for so long. When I first saw the one with everybody speaking in their own language, it really threw me. And then the translation of the lines was often very different or slightly different. It was never exactly the same. I love Wolfgang Priest. He's such a fantastic actor. Really great actor. That footage of all the parachutes coming down at night, which we cut to next, and we're now, I think, going to be cutting between British and American paratroopers landing in different places. That shot is actually from a training exercise that they did in the UK that was filmed during the war. So now we have a member of, I think he's the 82nd Airborne. He's come down in a garden in St. Mary Glees. The woman sees him and she goes running off to tell the mayor. And I think, if memory serves me rightly, one person lands in a well. And I think I read somewhere that did happen. And there's a great scene here where someone lands in the swamp and literally just happens to land in front of a German patrol, and he's killed just like that. And so we're cutting to some British landing now, who of course would have been right on the other side. One guy lands in a chicken coop and it's like, blimey, mate, shut up, you're going to wake up the whole German army. There's two types of British in this film. There's posh officers and lots of cockneys. All right, mate, and all that sort of thing. So, mate, you know. And then lots of officers that, yes, jolly good. Well, let's hurry things along, shall we? That kind of thing. There's a couple of shots here with the paras landing in the field with the cows and stuff. Very, very reminiscent of some of the scenes that you'll see in Band of Brothers episode 2. And the paratrooper that Beamer plays gets caught up in a tree, and his comrades move off without him. You also have these two guys landing in the greenhouse, and they wake up a German officer who's billeted. That German officer doesn't have any lines in the film, but he looks like Yul Brynner. Quite a staunch-looking chap. I'm actually curious to see if I can find out who he is, but I don't think he's got a face picture. And he puts his boots on the wrong feet, and the British manage to avoid him. There's the lovely Irene Dimmick. Oh, take that off. Open this over here, just off. I think we're going to cut to, if I remember rightly, it's going to be the priest under fire in the swamp, and he's trying to find his communion set. And again, that's based on a real incident that happened, apparently. This also happened. So we cut to German high command now. This is further up the coast. This is a very well-known location, and it's this chateau that these scenes were filmed at, with the paratroopers coming down in the courtyard. So that's actually a fair old way away. Chateau de Chantilly is where this stuff was shot. But yeah, there was a squad of, or one stick of British. They got blown off course and they landed in his courtyard. And, awfully sorry, old man, seem to have landed here by accident. So these are two quite well-known British actors of that era. One British para and a priest looking for his communion set, ducking under the water. Now, these scenes were all filmed inside at the set at Boulogne Studios, not Boulogne the town in Paris. And the indoor set was absolutely huge. It had a big lane with a brick wall. It had a couple of buildings, including things like those greenhouses and a couple of farm buildings, loads of trees, and lots of like swamp and marsh area where they could control all the lighting. And if you look at the lighting on the men's faces, which is supposed to be moonlight, you can see that's interior studio lighting. I've got about 1 hour 41 of the movie left to go. So I'm guessing we're over. What are we? We're an hour 19 in now. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is Pluscut getting woken up by his German commander. Great actor who plays him as well. I think his name's Christian Black or something like that. I need to get these. Let me get on another separate cast list up here so I can have a look. Yeah, Hans Christian Bleck played Pluskat, who's basically stationed up with the 352nd Infantry German Division. And the guy who plays his superior, who's got the blonde hair, looks very German. Just trying to get a name for him, but I don't see him. Oh, Peter Van Eck, that's right. Yeah, and he passed away in 1969, so he died at the age of 57. He was quite young. He was an anti-fascist who left Germany 2 years before Adolf Hitler came to power, but ironically ended up playing a lot of German commanders, including in another great film, The RrrrrMmmmm, which is a fantastic one that you and Darth Plato might want to do a watch party on at some point. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is in that.
I'm sorry, what film were you recommending?
Yeah, the RrrrRmmmmm. Peter Van Eck is also in that movie, and he plays another German commander. He did play a lot of roles like that, but he was keen to do other stuff, and he did do a huge number of other roles. I think he passed away of cancer at the age of 57. And I think there is a still of him. Oh, there's that photo that I showed earlier, slightly better quality. So we're now on the scene where the woman rushes in to see the mayor of St Mary Glees and the priest, and says, you know, a man came rushing into my garden and he just went shh and then ran away. And the mayor's like, shush, yes, shush. And that sort of goes on for a little bit. So this scene with the F Company, which Red Buttons is in, Red Buttons is playing John Steele, and he's actually got an item on the menu named after him in the town of St Mary Glees. I've got a picture of the church when I visited there. I'll see if I can get that up. So F Company unfortunately overshot the drop zone, and they landed in St Mary Glees. And what happened actually was the Germans had were out in the town because Allied bombing had set one of the houses on fire. So they were all there trying to put out this fire, and unfortunately the Germans were deployed in the town when the Americans came down, and so F Company, as a result of that, was massacred. One guy even went straight into the fire on the in the town, and John Steele got hung up on the church tower, and he was stuck there for most of the night. In fact, all of the night, I believe, and didn't get cut down until American reinforcements came. But the strangest thing, that's the real church in the background there, and there's a few things that they have in the town. And you can actually see, if you look on the corner of the church, you can see there's a parachute with a dummy on it to represent where John Steele landed. But I'm told that it's on the wrong corner, apparently. Now, this action scene is extremely well shot, especially things like Red Buttons coming over the church and then ending up on the side of it. The first shot you see of that is actually a stuntman, and the subsequent shots I believe were shot in the studio. But you've got these fantastic scenes with guys coming down and landing straight in the square. Now, how a lot of those were done were they were actually attached to cranes and they were dropped in. But yeah, the Americans were cut down. What the film doesn't show is that the Germans kind of, like, you know, they killed all of the Americans, and the ones that didn't get killed fled into the the edges of the town. And then the Germans went back to bed. Can you believe that? They went back to sleep thinking the battle was over. And then the next company of Americans that turned up found out what happened, saw all their dead pals all over the square and everything. And the civilians showed them where they were, and they massacred them. Took them all out. I don't think they took any prisoner. And I can completely understand why. Especially when you've got all your mates everywhere. All around Normandy, there's lots of memorials. For example, this particular one is for troopers from the 101st. And I believe this one is, these were all people that were in the same plane that were shot down, or two planes. It might have been one or two. I'm not sure. I think it was one. Yeah, and they were all killed very tragically. So red buttons at this point. We're running the film. We're about an hour and 26 minutes in, give or take. We're just coming up to dawn. And this is the real command and control bunker. I'm gonna pause this, and I'm gonna actually bring this up on screen. This location is real. It's still there. So the bunkers that I showed you earlier are literally located just behind this. So they're about 20 meters to the left of this location, which they doubled for flak positions in the south of Caen, I suppose. Of course, he has his dog with him, which this commander did have that dog. In the meantime, we cut back to Sal Moreno now, who's listening out for crickets going off. And I've got one of these, by the way. I don't know what I did with it, but it's around somewhere. I bought it from an American museum, and every man was issued with it so they could do the clicking noise and find each other in the dark. But unfortunately, it sounded remarkably similar to a German rifle being cocked. And that's what he hears, and he steps out and he gets shot by a German, and unfortunately is killed. Did you hear that? I just put my audio on for a second. I was wondering whether you could hear it.
I heard a noise, but I don't know what the noise was.
It was the clicking of the German rifle. So this scene now with Beamer again, the man, what happened to him, as his biography says. This is all shot. This is all inside. So this is all on a massive stage set in Paris. And apparently it was one of the biggest indoor sets ever built. I'm just going to pop that back up, which was the Battle for Saint-Mary-Glise. One of the things that really bowled me over as a kid, because you know, when you as a kid and you start watching movies and you're brought up on a diet of James Bond and this kind of thing, is you always enjoy action scenes. I'd never seen a film with so many big action scenes in it. And what we tended to do is then all get together on the weekend and we get our toy soldiers together and we'd recreate these scenes. And then, of course, so it was not surprising that later in life, I wanted to make a movie that was set in this period.
Are the action scenes your favorite thing about the film?
No, I wouldn't. I just think they're incredibly well done. I do love this scene where he's got the guys on the other side of the wall with the crickets, and they're both doing their crickets, and they pop up, and they're all from the 101st Airborne. He's from the 82nd, and they shouldn't even be anywhere near each other. And so he ends up joining up with them. No, for me, it was the history actually that was the thing, because My grandfather bought me a book on D-Day as a Christmas present, which was written by a guy called Brigadier Peter Young. I think he might have been there. And it had lots of pictures and everything. And my dad was explaining to me what, because I didn't even understand it. I didn't know what it was about. And he said, this is when we went back and took back Europe from the Nazis. My dad never called them the Germans. He was always very clear about distinguishing between Nazis and Germans, who he viewed as two different people. And my dad was in the Danish resistance and he lived through the war. So this scene is pretty funny because they're walking down one side of the wall and you've got this kind of German platoon coming up the other way. And the Germans go past the Americans, and Beamer's the only one who realizes that they're German soldiers. And apparently this really happened. And neither side fired on the other because they both thought that they were their own men until they'd gone past each other. And he's like sort of saying to the other guys, hey, they were Germans. And the other guys are heading off. So he's like, runs back to catch up with them. But he gets separated from them again. But we don't see him get separated, though. Now we're back to Pluscut in the bunker again. And he can't see anything coming. This is Peter Van Eck, who I mentioned earlier, who is also in Bridge at Remagen. There we are. So there he is. Great actor. And that scar on his face, I believe that's real. I'm not sure what the story is behind that scar. Have you got to that scene yet? Are we roughly in sync?
Right now, what I'm seeing is ships in the water.
That's when they...
and they're signaling.
Yeah, that's when the Allied fleet is approaching. That's just after this, I think. You got the bit where the guys... we've got Henry Fonda.
I'm seeing Peter Lawford talking to his men.
Oh, I think you might be slightly ahead of me. Because Henry Fonda's playing Theodore Roosevelt. And he suffered from Parkinson's. And they didn't want him to go in on the... Oh, am I still showing the film? Oh dear, let me stop doing that. Didn't realize I was showing the film still. I thought I'd put the other thing back up. Oh my God, I hope I don't get nabbed for that. That was up for quite a while.
Darth Plato, I'm at 1 hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're slightly ahead of me. So, yeah, they didn't want him to go in on the first wave of the invasion because they didn't want him to be killed because it would be a huge news story if the son of Teddy Roosevelt was killed. So they were trying to stop him from going in. And he was like, well, I'm the assistant division commander. I'm supposed to go in on the first wave. And he did go in. He unfortunately had a heart attack and died a few weeks later during the fighting in Normandy, I believe. I think he died in July. But he did go in on the first wave and he survived it. So now I'm probably at, I think I'm 1 hour 40 in. So am I slightly ahead of you then?
Yes, because I'm at 1:36:24.
What scene have you got right now?
The Roosevelt scene, I think, is just
okay. I'll go back a little bit. So after the Roosevelt scene, we cut to the German high command again calling Berlin, and this is when we find out that Hitler's gone to bed and taken a sleeping pill. It's not clear what time he actually did go to sleep. There's a lot of conjecture about that. But by the time the invasion was on, because he'd already refused to have the armor closer to the coast, it's unlikely that he could have implemented any changes that would have made a huge difference at this point in the... Then we've got Kurt Jurgens again, who, of course, is the villain in The Spy Who Loved Me, which, by the way, is my favorite Bond movie, just out of interest. Oh, wasn't Irene Demick beautiful? God, she's so beautiful. I'm not surprised that Daryl Zanuck fell in love with her. And actually, interestingly enough, I don't know if you know the background to the movie, but at the time, 20th Century Fox was on its knees because Cleopatra, which is, we should definitely do a live stream about Cleopatra. That movie was bankrupting the studio because it started off filming in the UK and then it got relocated to Rome, and it overran by about a year. The budget went triple up and all of these things. So it was costing huge sums of money. And they just had another massive flop as well. And they actually needed The Longest Day to be a success, as did Zanuck, because Zanuck was kind of washed up. He had a couple of flops, and he needed the film to be a success. Up to that time, it was the most expensive black and white film ever made until Schindler's List. So it cost $10 million, which in 2022 would have been $96 million. Still not a Marvel budget. You know, it's probably about the budget of Blue Beetle, I would imagine. But so, you know, you had a producer who was on his knees trying to rescue a studio that was on its knees, and halfway through filming, he was called back to Los Angeles, and they wanted to cut the budget by $3 million and wrap up filming within the next week and cancel the rest of the filming. And he was only halfway through the movie. That's the actor that played Rommel, who's fantastic. Fortunately, one of the studio executives was a veteran, and he chewed out all the board and stuck up for Zanuck and said, let him finish the movie the way he wants. Because, you know, otherwise, if you cut it, it's not going to be any good. And fortunately, that was the right decision. So we cut back to Plusket's bunker, the command and control bunker. And I forget the name of it. Let me look in my folder. It's called the battery at Long-sur-Mer. This is the command and control battery at Long-sur-Mer that he's in. And then we've got this wonderful effects plate shot where suddenly the fleet becomes visible. And he's like, oh my God, it's the invasion. They've come. I love his reaction in this scene. It's played just right. And then he's like straight onto the phone. You know, there must be 1,000 ships out there. And we cut to this Peter Van Eck sort of sipping on a cup of tea, going, come on now. The Allies don't have that many ships. Where are these ships heading? Straight for me. It's a really good scene. It's really well played. I like both of these actors as well. And one of the things that's interesting is that a lot of the soldiers that manned the bunkers were not German. There was a lot of Polish and Russian and Czech conscripts that were drafted into the German army against their will and were put in various bunkers. We then cut to Omaha Bradley giving the order to open fire. And then now we cut to a montage of the French High Command with Admiral Jujard. Now, this scene is not in a lot of versions of this film. It's not in the original UK VHS release. I don't know whether it was just cut for time, running time, because back then tapes, getting a 3-hour movie on a tape was a bit of a mission. I think the film was released on 2 VHS tapes in America, but it was 1 in the UK. And so, yeah, the fleet's about to open fire on the beaches. And then we cut to Goldfinger, Gert Frobe. Gert Frobe was also in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which filmed around this time. And we have the Frenchman on the beach. I think this beach scene, I think was probably filmed at the same location as the bunkers and everything else near La Rochelle. But it could have been shot in Normandy. I'm not sure. But none of the actual beach combat stuff was filmed on any of the beaches in Normandy, which I was surprised to learn that, because I was always certain they had filmed some of it on Utah Beach. Incidentally, I've also got this fantastic book, which it's such a good. It was such a good find. It's called Atlantic Wall, and this group of sort of, you know, D-Day enthusiasts got together, and they went and they photographed every bunker all the way along all the different coastlines, and they did the whole lot. So you've got, you know, everything from like Norway right down to the south of France. They're all here, including all the submarine bays and everything in the Netherlands and all the different bunkers that are left. Really, really, really well done. Fantastic book. So that is called Atlantic Wall, if anyone's interested. I don't know if you can get it on Amazon, but you can get it at the Pegasus Bridge Museum, which is where I bought it from on my last trip. So now we go into the bombardment of the beaches, and the invasion is truly underway. This is interesting because this still, and that may well be the case, suggests that this bridge scene was shot during the day. Look at that. And they then probably graded it to double day for night, because that is definitely not night. That's not a nighttime photograph. That's daytime, unless they were just recreating the scene for a still. But I don't know. It's quite possible they shot it during the day. So we're into the invasion now. The French couple's building is being bombarded. The man is celebrating. His wife thinks he's completely crazy. And the German Air Force gets a phone call, get up in the air. And he's like, what do you mean get up in the air? With what? We haven't got anything. And the commander's not impressed. He said, I don't care. Get up in the air now and quickly. And actually, did you ever see the sequel to 2001 Space Odyssey? 2010 with Roy Schneider and Helen Mirren. Did you ever see that movie?
I think I have. Yeah.
It's a good film. Well, the German actor in this, I'm pretty sure he's in that film, and he plays a character called Max. And he gets killed when he tries to approach the object. And I mean, I'm pretty sure he dies in his character dies in the film. I'm just going to check that, but I'm pretty sure that is the same actor. And this is a real character that he's playing. Pips Priller was the name of the guy, because I remember that from various wargaming scenarios. Yeah, he was the only German pilot to get anywhere near the beaches on D-Day, him and his colleague. And they I'll leave that invasion shot for the minute up as we're now into the invasion section of the film. So I was quite surprised. I found this out before I researched this for this stream, because I've always been very interested in how this film was made. And I think it was not long after Google Earth was invented that I started hunting for all the locations. And I was quite surprised to realize that this whole beach invasion sequence had been shot from 2 different locations. So whenever you're shooting towards the bunkers, towards the bluffs, and you can see the bunkers, that is France. But when you're seeing the shots of the landing craft coming onto the beaches, men in the water, anything that on the water's edge, that is Corsica. And they cut it quite cleverly between the two. So now we have German command reacting. They're trying lots of different phones, and of course nothing's working. So they can't get through to anyone. Still trying to find this actor. There are quite, I mean, I'm surprised, but there's quite a few of the cast still alive. Now, when the Germans are reacting and there's Germans coming out of bunkers, there's one shot of them pushing an anti-tank gun into position. That is footage that was shot by the Germans. And it's from a German newsreel. So there's a few bits and pieces. There's also a shot of the bluffs of Omaha from the point of view of the landing craft. And that's actually a miniature. Eddie Albert saying stand by, and you've got the Germans all in the trenches and everything. So as the landing craft come in and the mortars are landing in the water and all of this, and the landing craft are going down and the ramps are coming down and people are charging out, most of those shots were done at the beach in Corsica. And I've got that here. There it is. So that's this beach. And I mean, because the film's in black and white, there's no way that you could really appreciate that these waters would be crystal blue, you know. But the reason that they picked this beach was for safety purposes, as well as the fact that it looked like the beach, apart from the fact that the mountains are in the background, which in some shots in the film you can see them, but they did a good job of cropping them out most of the time. You'll notice with a lot of the beach invasion shots, when you've got a wide shot of the beach, the camera doesn't quite go high enough for you to see the hills in the background. You can see them in a few shots, but they used a lot of smoke to cover them up. There's one shot here where they're running up the beach and an explosion goes off and one guy flies through the air. That guy was not a stuntman, and he was actually injured, and he didn't follow the safety route, and he actually stepped on one of the detonations, and he wasn't severely injured, thankfully, but he was injured. You see, now when we cut to the bunker and Norm Coter running up to the base of the bunker, which is very Saving Private Ryan, that is now the other beach with the bunkers on it. So it's when you think about the editing cutting between these two sequences, it's very, very impressive. And this scene with this young lad, I don't know if you're at the same place as me, or but they got the most youthful, scared-looking kid they could, and he drops his rifle, and he ends up next to the general, and he says, "Don't you want to go back out there and get your rifle?" He's like, "Out there, sir? Well, I think you're probably going to need it before the end of the day." "Yes, sir." And he just kind of reluctantly goes and runs back out to pick up his rifle. I mean, you know, with the general telling you to do that, you don't really have a lot of choice, do you? I think also this is, I mean, no one's got like a lead role in this film, but I have to say it's that several people give out. I mean, the cast overall give absolutely outstanding performances. But Robert Mitchum is fantastic in this movie. Absolutely fantastic. You can see when you see the beach invasion scenes, if you just look far enough ahead in the distance, you can see that the fortifications only go so far and then they just stop. And the beach obstacles certainly would have been all the way along. It's just that's where the set ends. Then we cut to Utah Beach at 6:44 hours. I'm 1 hour 57 minutes in on this point. And Utah Beach was the least defended. Not only that, but the majority of the American forces actually landed at the wrong section of the beach, which was even less defended than the one that they had proposed to land at. They got confused because of the naval bombardment and the smoke and all the rest of it. And the beach was very, very lightly defended. A lot of the obstacles and things were not complete. I don't know if this is a completely different beach or if they've just redressed it or where this might be. I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to work out just by looking at. And we've got Henry Fonda there, just deciding where to set up the headquarters. I think this is probably the same beach in Corsica, actually. I think that this is, I think it's probably the same one. It looks like it. Because again, it hasn't got any of the big bunkers on it. And this is Roddy McDowall's little scene. I don't think we see him again in the movie after this. And he's proudly telling his sergeant that he killed a German, and then he realizes his sergeant is dead, which is quite sad. Yeah, so this is the scene we've just seen with Henry Fonda going in. The US Navy, by the way, lent them these landing barges. There were considerably more of them available back in '62 than there were for Saving Private Ryan. The ones for Saving Private Ryan came from all over the world. Whereas there were still quite a few of them in Europe, actually, back then. They hadn't all gone back to America. I think the French owned a few, and various different people contributed them. Which bit are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at Sean Connery saying, "Come on, you bastards," or something like that.
Oh, yeah, he's Flanagan first. Let's give them back for Dunkirk, somebody says. And he's like, "Oh, did you hear that? He says he was at Dunkirk." Well, he was too young at the time. Have you had the bit where the aircraft come swooping in and attack the beaches yet? Because that's the only time we see the Canadians, and it's said to be Golden Juno Beach, and it's all done with a helicopter. This superb shot, and you basically go along their beach set. Now, I think this is the beach in France, the one near La Rochelle, because there's no mountains in the background. But there's a couple of gaffes with this aeroplane swoop. If you look closely, when they first go in, all the troops on the beach are actually Americans. And then when they cut to the reverse shot, that's when they have all the British forces in. And then we go to Sword Beach and Connery landing. So I think you're slightly ahead of me.
I'm at 2 hours and 27 seconds.
Yeah, because I'm just on the bit with Connery landing now. So I'll skip ahead slightly.
Sometimes my there's a storm here. It's not a major storm, but it is affecting my Wi-Fi a bit.
Are you getting the bit with? Are you at the bit with the dog on the beach?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a true story. This guy was a real. You had a guy who was a beach master in charge of every beach, and he would be responsible for basically directing the traffic effectively. And of course, they were really confused and congested places, especially in the first 48 hours. Yeah, that's right, Darth Plato. That's the role that Henry Fonda's playing, and he was listed as killed in action, but he did actually die of a heart attack during an action. And then this is the bit where they've got the Bren gun carrier, and the guy says, "Well, do what my mother said. Anything wrong with it? Just give it a good bang." And then it starts. So Kenneth More was an extremely well-known British actor. Supposed to be an absolute pleasure to work with on set. I can't vouch for that. He starred in a number of films called Doctor in Love, which were not quite as silly as the Carry On films. They were more comedy romance movies. And he was a big British, I guess you would call him a pin-up guy. I mean, you wouldn't think so with his beard and his rough look here, but he was a proper heartthrob back in his day. So these scenes were filmed on the same part of the French coast, but a little bit further along. They were filmed here. So the scenes that you're looking at were filmed in this area. It was nowhere near as built up as this. And this is the beach that was used for the British scenes and where this guy arrived with the bike. So, I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of these houses were not here back then. And there were probably still houses that were damaged from the war and stuff like that. But this is not much further along from where they filmed the Omaha beach stuff. If I go back to the map, you can see that beach is here and Omaha Beach is here. So it's all in the same location. And I dare say that the actors were quite happy to be on that island for the duration of filming. This is where Norman Rossington says, "I don't know about you, but there's a lot of strange men on this beach." And that line has become a bit of an in-joke between me and a certain group of friends, that whenever we see somebody strange, we turn to each other and we recreate that scene. And God, I don't know about you, Flanagan, but there's a lot of strange men on this beach. So these are the Germans heading towards the beaches to reinforce them. Now, but by this stage, the Allies had complete command of the air. There were 3 Spitfires that were lent to the production, and one of them was actually flown by one of the owners. And they shot this scene completely for real, all practical effects, with the Spitfires swooping down and machine gunning the German convoy. And the Germans couldn't move at daylight in anywhere within a certain distance of the beaches. The Allies would just bomb them, and they had to move after dark predominantly. Why the Air Force was not as effective at controlling the German movements during the Battle of Operation Market Garden, I don't know, but they did a very good job on D-Day. And poor Werner Pluskart's his car has been shot up and he's been wounded. And you can see that the German convoy has been decimated in this sequence. Very well handled. Darth Plato's asking the time. That was earlier. Sorry.
2 hours and 5 minutes right now, Darth Plato.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, I've just cut to the scene where Rommel is in Germany and he's handing the shoes to his wife. I don't know if are you on that scene?
No. They were on the road and a car just blew up, and now there's a cake with a candle.
Oh yeah, the cake with the candle is you're about 20 seconds behind me. Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is Rommel being told that it's Normandy, and of course he has to return. Rommel was probably the best commander that the Germans had, and actually, if he'd been the overall commander of German forces, well, it could have been a very different outcome to the war. Oh, Desert Phoenix is here. Good to see you, Desert Phoenix. Desert Phoenix is a veteran. Thank you for your service again. Jingles has referenced Market Garden in several of his videos. I don't know who Jingles is, but I'll be sure to check them out. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could have a big discussion about how Germany could have won, mainly by not attacking Russia would have been the. So now we're coming on to. I mean, there are 4 action scenes in this that are absolutely outstanding. We're coming on to the attack on Pointe du Hoc, so I'm going to see if we've got some stills of that. So let's see if we can get one of those up for this scene. And this was shot at the real Pointe du Hoc, although the Rangers did land slightly further away. They weren't literally right. They were slightly more to the left of where we see them in the film. But it was just much easier and more cinematic. Oh, I want to freeze this shot. Let me show it. So this is the real Pointe du Hoc coastline. Now, if you go there now, this very famous rock, you see that with the arch here, that is no longer intact. All of that section has fallen into the sea, and you've just got a pinnacle of this here. But the bunkers and everything are all still there, as are the shell craters from the Allied bombing, and they are particularly big and very impressive. And I do have me standing in one of them at the bottom. And I've got several stills of this location, so I'll see if I can get some of them up. Right, that's at the top there. That's that same rock behind people. I'm not sharing it at the moment, but I'll pop that back up while I have a look at my photos and see if I can get a. So that's them filming this sequence. Note how many kind of special personnel there are, and you got medics there and all sorts. Plus one man wearing tartan trousers. What was he thinking? With an orange shirt. That's probably the first AD, and he's probably doing that to deliberately stand out so people know who he is. So this sequence features a number of very well-known Americans: Robert Wagner, Paul Anka. You've got Fabian, who was another singer. I think there's 3 singers in this sequence. Paul Anka's particularly good in this scene. Extremely well choreographed, well shot. I've stood exactly where all this was filmed, so I'll see if I can grab a photo or 2 of this real location. Pointe du Hoc, there we are. Okay. So it's called Pointe du Hoc Ranger Memorial now. There's so I've got it's covered in shell craters. This is me standing at the bottom of one of them. And I don't think this is the biggest crater. So RM has just nipped out for a sec. But that's one of the shell craters in Pointe du Hoc. Let me see if I can pop up a couple of other stills from my visit there. My trip there was, I've been there a couple of times, but this was in 2011. And then the second time I went there, it was much more busy than the first. So that's one of the bunkers there, which you do see in the movie. And you can see there's another bunker over to the far left here. And all these depressions, these are all shell craters, because this location was repeatedly bombed. So gradually the Germans push forward and make their way in. Paul Anka, who's wearing a life reserver, quite short, does a great scene where he drops a grenade into one of the bunkers and kind of sits up with his feet sticking over the edge. It's very well done. I love his character in it. He did an awful lot with his character. And he clearly had some training on how to fire that Thompson too. And you can see all the cartridges coming out. By the way, 60,000 rounds of ammunition were expended. I think it was even more than that actually were expended with filming this. So I'm gonna pause. Oh damn! Just at the wrong bit. Hang on. I want to pause this shot here, which is a really good shot of the whole area, but I've lost it now. Yeah, there it is. Let me get that. Okay, my running time is going to be a bit messed up now. So I'm going to have to skip forward a little bit, because I'm going to pause it here. I've been messed. Right, okay. So this is a really good shot of the same area, more or less the same area from the movie. Welcome back. You need breaks. It's a long film. So this is a grab from the movie, RM. You're probably a little bit further on from this sequence, but this is the real point to hoc location. You can see one of the bunkers in the foreground left, covered in netting, etc. And this is a still similar angle, definitely showing the same section of terrain, slightly different angle that I took in 2011. And again, you've got a bunker on the right there and a bunker on the left. And I think that bunker on the right was probably the one in the bottom left-hand corner that we saw a moment ago. And I'll put some more pictures up as we go. I need to get my counter back in sync with yours if I can.
Well, I am currently at 2 hours and 13 minutes.
So 47 minutes left to go, roughly.
Yes.
So yeah, so they get up to this big bunker and they're like, that's the one that we want. And they get in there and there's no guns. Now, this part of the film, and you've got George Segal in this scene, this is all true. They did get into the bunkers, and because the location had been shelled so frequently, what the Germans had done was they actually removed the guns from the bunkers and they camouflaged them and they put them in an orchard. And they were found a couple of hours later. They weren't found like immediately. So in terms of what's shown in the film, in the timeline, it's correct that they, within the timeline of The Longest Day, you know, once we'd seen the climax of that battle, we don't really need to see the scene where they find the guns in the orchard. But there's a lot of the bunkers are. This also featured on Call of Duty. This scene, and it was extremely well done. And I have to say, the landscape was incredibly accurate as well. So this is another still of the same area. This is one of the major blockhouses, and you can see that the Tobruk turret, which would have had a machine gun turret in it, is still here. And there's one of the major bunkers behind on the left there. In the film, meanwhile, we have now cut back to von Rundstedt and one of his officers, again played by Kurt Jürgens from The Spy Who Loved Me, essentially pleading with him to call Hitler, get the armor released, get it on the road, let's get going. And I'm not sure of the authenticity of this scene. It's probably true. Von Rundstedt was quite a proud guy. He was an old school officer. He wasn't the best. He was a decent commander, but he wasn't the best. He was good at restructuring forces, but not particularly good at reacting to situations. So yeah, he refuses to call Hitler, and valuable hours are lost. Whether it would have made any difference, difficult to say. So we cut back to Pegasus Bridge now. Are you back at Pegasus Bridge yet with the British?
Yeah.
This is a great scene. Now the Germans are pressing their attacks, but the bridge itself, the biggest threat that happened to the bridge was that 2 German gunboats from the port further up the canal, loaded with injured that had fled from the beaches, came racing down the canal towards the bridges, not knowing that the bridges were under Allied control. Now, if you look on the left, that's Albert Finney, very famous actor, having his dinner with one of the other British actors there. This scene where Lovett arrives is slightly inaccurate. They did not arrive down the road, the canal towpath. They actually came through the town and arrived straight on. In the background of this shot, which I wanted to pause. Oh, I've missed it now. Let me see if we get it again. In the background of the shot with Lovett approaching, you can see a church. That church, I've got it, was filled with German snipers. And they killed about 11 British paratroopers between them. And eventually that church was fired on by a tank and a Piat, and it was taken. The snipers were taken out. So this is the scene that I showed you them filming earlier, and this is that same sequence, and we can see that Irina Demick is there, even though she wasn't in this scene. And I dare say that she was probably there. Any day Daryl Zanucks was there, she probably would have been there. Yeah, Darth Plato kind of reinforcing what I said. He was relieved with scathing criticism in 1942 from the Eastern Front. Yeah, they kind of gave him what they thought was a relatively easy job. Yeah, the scene where Lovett's commandos crosses the bridge didn't exactly happen like this. The first 3 commandos that went over the bridge were killed by sniper fire. So they weren't able to kind of march across heads held high freely. It was much more of a run and dash. But the guy with the pipes did stand up and play the pipes over the bridge. I'm in touch with his son, and his son was keen to point out to me that the pipes, the track that's played is not the right music. That's not what was piped when they turned up at the bridge. It was different. So that was something that we were keen to get correct in the Pegasus Bridge film. Then we cut back to John Wayne with his forces, and they hear about F Company being massacred, and a load of boys from the 101 turn up. And where are you taking that thing? We don't know, sir. Who are you with? We're with the 101st Airborne. Well, you're in the 82nd now. I love that line. It's great. This was filmed in the French countryside somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where. So this could have been Normandy, or it could have been in the countryside near La Rochelle. I'm really not sure on this location. There's definitely France. You can tell from the architecture of the buildings and the stone walls and so on. So I'd love to know where that is, but I've really no idea. I have tried to find it. So if anyone in chat knows, feel free to dive in. I'll just skip ahead a little bit on my stills here. I think we're coming up to this scene now, which is the... Are you still on the John Wayne scene?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I'm at 2 hours 25, roughly.
I'm at 2 hours 23.
Yeah, okay. That's close enough. Yeah, so John Wayne gets carted about because he broke his ankle, didn't he, when he landed? So we now cut back to Allied Command in England. I don't know if you're on that scene yet. And this is when all the reports are coming in of different things. And the Allies have learned that the landings at Omaha are held up, heavy casualties, very poor communication from the men on the beach to the actual naval force. They're not even sure if anybody on the beach is left alive at this point in time. Most of the radios weren't working. They'd either been destroyed on the way in or they'd gone in the water. Quite a lot. If you go to Omaha Beach, by the way, and you walk out right up to the low tide and you turn round and you see how far they had to run to get to the bluffs, it's a long way. It's not far off a kilometer. It's a long distance. And then further out to sea, you can see about another 50 meters out to sea, there's a sandbar, and a lot of the landing craft accidentally landed and dropped their ramps there, thinking it was the beach, and it wasn't. And then there was a massive section of water that the men had to walk up, you know, and go under. So now we've got the French commandos arriving at Ouistreham, and this was all filmed in Port en Bassine, as I said. And you've got one of the best shots ever done for a movie, which is this incredible helicopter sequence that I might actually take a risk and actually let me check my email, see if I've had some kind of notification from YouTube. No. Okay, good. Yeah, this helicopter sequence, this shot is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best shots done for a film ever, in my opinion. Incredibly well choreographed action. I mean, it's all done in one take. It's all one shot. And these kind of shots back then in '62 were not a common thing. And if you look now at the screen, there's that little house that I just showed you in the image. And we come round to the car park, which is still there. And in the car park is where they built the casino. And the camera eventually pans round to, and we see the Germans. And there's the little castle on the top left, which I showed you earlier. This is one of the best shots in the film. And there's the men on the top of the casino with the... But that casino wasn't actually there. It was just a reinforced position. Now, I have to admit, cinematically, this is a lot more exciting. Actually, I've got a model of this thing. I'm going to grab it quickly.
And Stubble, is this the harbor scene that you were referring to a few hours ago? Because it is very impressive. Yeah, you were right, Stubble. It is a very good scene, and I'm glad you told me about it to look out for it.
So this is my model of the casino. It's an exact replica of the one that was built for the film. And as I said, the casino didn't look anything like this. What it would have looked like on the day, it would have actually really been just that. With probably some gun positions on the top, because the top part of it had all been demolished. But you know what? It looks great in the film, and I don't care. It's still a fantastic scene. It still shows the difficulties they had capturing it. I bought this for gaming, but it's 20mm, and most of the stuff I do is either 10mm or 1/32, and I have thought about building a 1/32 version of this for a games convention. I did actually paint this. When it came, it wasn't painted, and you can take the roof off and put your guys in here and all of that kind of thing.
That's nice. That's a very nice model, Lance.
Yeah, it's great. I even though it was not the scale I was collecting, when I saw it at a games convention, and I thought, oh, that's from The Longest Day. I've got to have that. And now, in the midst of this battle, one of the things that happens, And just also remember, all of these scenes were there's a lot of dialogue in this battle scene, and all these dialogue shots were filmed twice. They weren't dubbed; they were filmed twice. So they would do a French take until they got it and they were happy with it, and then they would just reset and they would film the same shot again until they got a British take. So they made sure that all of the actors that they cast were also fluent in English, because when it was released in America the first time, it was everyone was speaking English, because, you know, back then subtitles very unpopular. People didn't like subtitles back then. And again, just to remind people, so this is from the filming of this sequence is here, and you can see that little kind of hut thing, and then this is the real location. I don't think that hut thing is still there, but let's have a quick look. I don't think it's still there. No, I didn't think so. One of the things I do remember when I was here is that you can actually see some German fortifications near here. If you look up on this hillside, I don't know if we'll be able to see them. Yeah, you can see there's part of a bunker there, and there's part of a bunker there. So even here, and there was an SS unit in Port-en-Bassin, and it didn't fall until right at the end of the day. They held out, and it was a scene of really fierce fighting. Now you've got this great sequence now where this group of nuns turn up, walking right through the mists of the fighting and going to tend the French injured. This really happened, and none of them, as far as I'm aware, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there, but from what I've read, I don't think any of them were killed. And of course, the French commandos were telling them to go away and leave, and the woman absolutely refused and just said, "Look, we're here to tend the wounded. Shut up, get on with your job." And gave him rather short shrift. And I think it's great that it's included. And you can imagine as well that if you're a German soldier and you're firing at the French positions, you're not going to want to be the guy that shot the nun, are you? Really, you're not going to want to be that guy. I think this is probably my second favorite action scene in the film. I'd never seen an action sequence like this, you know, with the big epic sort of helicopter shot and so many different elements going on. It's just incredibly well edited, and then the tank turns up, and this did happen. He did go to get a tank. There was no canal like as such that the guy had to run over or anything. That's all a bit of dramatic license. But I love this scene between the two guns, each trying to get the better of the other in time. The Germans, unfortunately, not quite quick enough, and they get destroyed, and the position falls. Yeah, it was quite a surreal moment standing in that car park. I just literally got out of the car, looked up the hill, and went, "This is Ouistreham in The Longest Day." The funny thing is, also, if you watch the special edition, Ken Anakin wasn't supposed to direct these scenes. It was supposed to be a French director, and the French director got fired by Daryl Zanucks. I don't know who he was. So Ken Anakin got brought in to direct this action sequence. And he thought, because he hadn't studied that part of the story, because he wasn't due to direct it, he thought it was the real Ouistreham. And he thought that right up until the day he passed away, because he did an interview on this version, the DVD. There's an interview with him, and he says, "It's amazing. I arrived at the real Ouistreham and they completely rebuilt the casino, but it's not Ouistreham, it's Port-en-Bassin." So they even convinced the director that it was the real location, and he thought that right up until he passed away. So we cut to Wolfgang Priest, who's summarizing the Allied position and saying if the if they don't get off the beach in the middle, the invasion will collapse because they won't be able to link up, which is true. And we now cut to Robert Mitchum trying to pull the American forces together. Yes, double McShave, incredibly impressive. And yeah, I mean, 1962, you're talking big cameras, big film cameras. You know, they couldn't just buy a drone from Maplin's and chuck it in the air. Extremely well filmed. Like I said, I'd never seen an action sequence like it at the time. And many of the action sequences in Longest Day weren't really matched until I saw Bridge Too Far. And of those two films, I don't think that there's a World War II film that's had action scenes that surpassed either of those movies. Apart from the opening 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, which is obviously very well done. So this is when Norm Coter does this famous speech. Now, if you've seen, didn't you do a watch party on the Big Red One with Darth Plato? Did you guys do that? That's another one.
The Big Red One? I don't think we did.
I'm probably going to do that. That'll be this side of Christmas. I'm doing the director's cut of that. So in the director's cut of that, it's a very, very good film. It's got severe budget limitations because they told a really big story with not a lot of money. So you haven't quite got the correct tanks and things like this, but it's still very well done. But this same sequence where Norm Coter is talking to his men and saying, pull yourself together. There's only two kinds of men that are going to lie on this beach. Those that are dead and those that are going to die. Get off your butts. You're the fighting 29th. You know, that scene is also in the extended cut of the Big Red One, which covers the first Infantry Division, which landed with the 29th on Omaha Beach. They were a bit further up. It's a little bit of public liberty having it in there because he was probably talking predominantly to the men of the 29th, although they got pretty mixed up. So different people landed in the wrong places and in the wrong beaches. And I think the troops, Darth Plato will know the answer to this, but I think in Saving Private Ryan, I think they're with the 1st Infantry Division, I believe. So I'm on Norm Dakota doing his big speech with his men, and he's asking him to strip the dead and the wounded of ammunition and weapons and get ready to fight. And it's a really well done scene. And he did do this. He did do this speech. This is in numerous accounts of men that were there at the time. And again, this is the beach in France that's near La Rochelle. This is not the beach in Sardinia. But when you get reverse, looking out to sea, it could be the beach in, not Sardinia, sorry, Corsica. I do love Sardinia. That's why it's in my head. Very nice. Very nice place. Personal favourite of mine. I'd go back there any chance. I mean, look at the size of this camera compared to, I mean, digital cameras can get pretty big as well, but these things were really heavy. You know, you couldn't run around and do a handheld with that thing.
No.
You know? So it's amazing, isn't it? You're seeing this shot being filmed and there's so many people standing around like watching this guy so close. So it's a real testament to them that they pulled it off. Now, here's Daryl Zanuck actually talking to Robert Mitchum, probably just before he did that speech scene, which we've just seen. We cut back to the German command at this point, and Wolfgang Priest is getting very frustrated because he can't get through the right people. The reinforcements aren't arriving. And then we cut back to St. Mary Glees. Now, all of these scenes in St. Mary Glees were really filmed there. And I was constantly trying to find, when I went there, I was trying to find which angle or where they had put the camera for the various different shots. And some of the buildings were still damaged from the war. So the one that Red Buttons was in, where he's sitting on the chair and you can see the church in the background, that is a real shop that was actually there. And I don't know whether they took the window out of the shop or whether it was a building that was still damaged. But back in 62, there was a lot of buildings that were still just empty. But I suspect that they probably staged this one and dressed it. When I visited there in 2011, it was unbelievable. You looked in the window of one of the shops, and it was full of like German helmets, German machine guns, German rifles that had all been dug up and were for sale. The John Wayne's reaction to seeing the troops hung up on the trees is extremely well done. This scene, I thought, kind of Wayne doing what he does best. You know, he didn't have a great versatility in terms of his acting, but he was very good at what he did. Always had amazing presence, I thought. See, this is when one of his officers wants to know whether they should pull out of the town, and he's like, "No, hell no. We came here to take St. Mary Glees, and we're gonna take it and hold it until hell freezes over." And then he gets the men to push out of town and attack the Germans head on. Oh, that's inside. That picture's inside the interior set in Boulogne Studios in Paris, not Boulogne. Yeah, that's still there. That's clearly a chateau in the background. I would love to know where this location is. If anybody knows, let me know, or if you find out, you can contact me via Facebook. So I'm going to freeze a shot here. Red Buttons has got that great line here where he says, "The old man sure seems different from yesterday. Maybe we've all changed since yesterday," and that's so true. So this is one of the things I really love about this movie, is it puts E in the word epic. So just like a shot like this, I've had to pause my version while yours rolls on. There's so much in that shot. You've got a guy hanging from the tree here, another one hanging from a telegraph pole here, signs to Cherbourg, explosions going off in the distance, and that's the real square of Saint-Mère-Église as it was in 62, redressed to look like 1944. I love like depth of production design and when they cram loads of stuff into one shot. For me, that's what I call production value in a shot. You get all the extras that you've got, put them in a shot, and get them to march off in a certain direction. I've got loads of shots like that planned for my own film. So let's put that back up. No, I better skip ahead slightly. What time code are you at now?
I'm almost at the end, Lance.
Are you back on Omaha Beach?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're trying to. So this is the first time I'd ever seen them using what's called a Bangalore torpedo. We've got Jeffrey Hunter trying to put them together. Has Jeffrey Hunter been killed yet?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, he's just died on mine. And they didn't overplay any of. I mean, I know it's not got the gore of Saving Private Ryan, because you've got to understand back then they didn't show stuff like that in movies to that degree, because people were scared a lot more easily of violence and horror films and things, because, you know, cinema was still relatively new. we hadn't even got to the era of the Hollywood blockbusters yet. But I think the death scenes are very well done in this. And it wasn't just a case of, with Omaha Beach, of one section being blown in a wall and suddenly the beach was taken. I mean, which is the impression that the film kind of conveys. It was more that different groups of men here and there gradually fought their way in and up the hill and took one position after another. Some of the strong points held out right until the end of the day, or until they surrendered once they'd run out of ammunition. Eddie Albert's character getting killed by shell fire just as they were leaving the beach. That's true. That did happen. So yeah, he did get killed. So now they're all steaming in. Are you at the bit with the German headquarters yet, where they're burning the papers?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you on that now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on that. That's good. So then after that, we get the second from end scene. I'll try and see if we can get a still with Mr. Burton. So many different posters for this movie. Incredible number of different posters. So there's Paul Anka. That's quite a good one. Yeah, because Paul Anka wrote the song that's coming up. There's a load of stills there from the premiere. Look at that. It's quite interesting that this guy here looks exactly like the actor James Woods for some reason. I think there's some people there that at the premiere there that are not actually in the film.
Well, yeah, it looks like Audrey Hepburn is there.
I think that's Audrey Hepburn, yeah. And that's at the chart. Is that? Oh, that's the Paris premiere. If you look, or it's stills. I think it's stills from the Paris premiere. Lots of different posters and covers, and boy, was there a lot of those. So this final scene between Burton and Mr. Beamer, whose book, as I mentioned earlier, is available if you wish to read his quite psychedelic and strange journey, is a really good scene. This is all shot in the studio in the big set that they built. So even though it's a daytime scene, I think it was shot in that same interior, in a nice environment where they could control the sound, because it's quite an important moment. It's this kind of moment of peace in the madness. And there's Burton here, but that's from an earlier scene. Richard Burton, by the way, is my favorite actor of all time. He was the first actor whose career I really got into. And then I think the first thing I saw him was either this. It probably was this, because I think I saw this before Where Eagles Dare. And then I saw him in Where Eagles Dare. And there's our German from earlier. Now, I like the fact that the guy says, do you know, I haven't fired my gun all day. I keep hearing firing every time when I get there, everybody's gone. And he can't, he's been chasing action the whole day. Let's see if we can find a still of Mr. Beamer here. Actually, let's get his IMDb up. See if there's I mean, it's interesting. He's still alive, but I don't know that I'd get a compos mentis interview out of him. But I'd certainly love to try. There's about 7 or 8 of the actors, mostly the young Americans like Robert Wagner, Paul Anka. I think Fabian is Fabian still alive? Quite possibly. Yes, he is. And these are all people that were born in like during the war or just after. They're still around, so it would have been great to have got one of them for an interview. That would have been fantastic. I might see if I can track some of them down. Richard Beamer, here he is. So he plays, and he's called Private Dutch Schultz in the movie, which is quite weird when you think that Dutch Schultz was a gangster. Here we go. So it's this scene that we're on right now. And I do like the bit where Richard Burton says a medic came along, but he didn't have any morphine, so he stuck the wound together with safety pins, which is like, you don't need to see it. You can just hear it and go, ooh.
And they were probably lucky to have those safety pins.
Yeah. And at the end of it, it goes, I wonder who won. And then it cuts back to the beach. And this beach is the beach in France near La Rochelle. You can tell because when you get the panoramic shot of it, you can't see the mountains in the background, which you saw in the earlier landing scenes. So I guess maybe it was a safety thing, or just because it's clear water from a safety point of view, that's a lot easier to see what you're doing. And but this bunker that you can see as Norm Coter gets on the Jeep and run me up the hill, son. Now that hill at Omaha Beach, this hill is tiny, right? The real hill is absolutely massive. It's a real slog. It took me the distance from walking from the cemetery down to the edge of the sand took me about half an hour walking it. So and this is like the final shot of the movie before we go into the credits. And that song at the end was written by Paul Anka, by the way, and it was adopted by the Canadian Rangers, I think, as their song. So you can tell that this is not the beach in Corsica because we can see there's no mountains in the background, and these bunkers are the ones that I showed you guys on the map earlier. And that is the end of The Longest Day. And it's still not my longest stream though. So yeah, our what would you give the film? Looking at it now, what would you give the film out of 10?
I give it a 10 or an 11 if I could. I think it's just a perfect film, and to be able to do all of that work and recreate everything so well, it's absolutely wonderful. There's no downtime in this film. It's constantly moving, and there's so much that it wants to tell. And I was kind of curious as to whether or not, when I first heard about the film, what could be included effectively in the film that would make sense to the audience, because the majority of people watching this now may not have a parent like you and I have who was in this war, or even a grandparent. They're so far removed from this event, which took place over 70 years ago, that it really is so just distant. And this may be their only time that they ever watch anything like this that's going to convey the events of that time period. Even in the context of trying to explain what was going on would be difficult by reading it. I think this film can, with its, let's say if it does have any imperfections at all, can and does illustrate in a way that, as if you took a time machine to that era and then visited the spots where it took place. It looks incredibly accurate. And I almost wonder whether it's even necessary to, like, if we had a checklist and we were some of the production designers and you and I had to recreate this, I would understand that. But for the purposes of film, it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It looks very good. The actors are incredible. It's really just a wonderful film. And Stubble McShave was the one who had said, check out the harbor scene. So I couldn't remember where it was. So I was watching it with you, Lance. I'm like, where's this harbor scene? Until the end of the film. But it does look incredible. It looks like something out of a game. I know this sounds, somewhat trivial to even say it that way, but it does look like something out of a game, because it looks almost if somebody designed that to challenge you. And it was challenging. In real life, it was challenging and just so impressive. My favorite scene, Lance, is, of course, when they drop the dummies. It's always been my favorite scene.
Oh, yeah?
Always my favorite, because I didn't know about it when I first saw the film. So
All
when it,
right.
what they were doing, the part where before they drop the dummies, and you see they have one hung up like for view, so you could see it.
Yeah.
And in that point in the film, I remember thinking to myself, they're not going to drop these things and people are going to think they're real. And my mother's like, that's exactly what happens. And I'm like, oh, I love this. Like, this is so cool.
It's one of the moments where the truth is stranger than the fiction, if you know what I mean. This is one end of Omaha Beach. It's the far western end. And there's a jetty that goes out, which I was standing on when I took this photo. So that's me looking to the west, and that's the end of the beach at the west. And you can see how high those bluffs are. And then look there on the left-hand side. This is one of the draws that the Americans would have had to have captured. And if you look there, you can see the bunker in the side of the hill. Now, the bunker facing forward in Saving Private Ryan, those did exist, but there were very few of those in Normandy. What they always did with the bunkers was they built them side on so that they couldn't be seen from the shore. You see how it's covered up by the cliff here, but it has a perfect field of fire all the way down the beach. And actually, I remember when I walked up this track, there's another massive bunker hidden just behind this hill here as well. And then looking the other way down the beach, which is where the majority of the beach is, you can see how massive it is. That's looking the other way from the same position. And this was later in the day when I first got there. It was low tide, and I'm trying to find the picture that I took when I went right out to the edge of the sea, and I turned around and took a picture of the hill that they had to assault and get up.
Well, Lance, thank you for inviting me to this to watch and to listen to your experiences in the film. It certainly was a lot of fun to hear everything that you had to say and take a walk down your experience and exploring more about the making of the film and its locations.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the stream and keeping me company. I did have a couple of other people that said they might pop in, but Saturday night is quite precious for a lot of people. If you ever get to go there, you'll find that everything is kind of well signposted with historical things like this. So this is the Verville, Charlie Dog Green sector of the beach. And of course, the beach is divided into all these different sections. And right above it, you have the main American cemetery. And oh my God, I mean, you walking around that place is an experience all of its own. It's quite something.
Now, thinking about the film and thinking about remaking the film or trying to remake something like this.
Ooh. Well,
do we even have the actors, honestly, who could pull this off?
Oh, listen, I see dozens of unknown, very talented actors every day. Here's another one of the bunkers on Omaha. We definitely have the actors. We have the effects. The question is really not, can we do it? I think the question is, should we? And I don't know. I think one of the things that's great about The Longest Day is the fact that it's in black and white. I was kind of annoyed it was in black and white when I watched it as a kid, because, once I started watching TV, everything was in color. And I think, apart from some of the old Westerns, I think this might have been the first film I really sat down and properly watched. And I remember sitting, and watching it with my dad, and he was very interested in these things. Bonzo Kilburn, The War to End All Wars. Oh, wait, there was one before this, as if we will never learn. Darth Plato is saying remake it.
I think they could try and do something like this, especially since there seems to be this desire to revisit epic films. But I also think that this next generation needs to realize what's happened. And I don't think they're going to go through this film as a go-to film to learn what happened. I think they're going to want to see a more modern version of the film.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. I don't see any, I don't think any other version of this film could take away, you know, the significance of this version. I don't think that that's possible to do that. However, I think that they do need to, if not remake it, tell another version of it, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously you kind of had the airborne perspective to a degree in Band of Brothers. There's 2 episodes dedicated to Normandy. We never see the beaches, of course, but I do think, yeah, you're completely right. It's going to be very difficult to grab a 7-year-old and say, sit down and watch this 3-hour black and white movie. They're probably not going to want to do it. However, if you say, sit down and watch this 3-hour color movie, it's got loads of action in and some of your favorite young actors. Because, of course, if you cast the ages correctly, you're going to put in a new version of The Longest Day, you're going to have 40 actors aged between 18 and 22. So that means you're going to have, you know, all the Jonas Brothers or whoever is the right people to cast at that time. They were very clever with the Dunkirk movie. They cast Harry Styles in that film. And I'll tell you now, that wasn't, you know, he was okay in it. He was not bad. I was quite surprised, and credit to him. This is another bunker from Omaha with a memorial for, I think, the 1st Division on the top. But the reason that they cast Harry Styles in that film was a tactical one, because I'll tell you right now, until they cast him, no 16-year-old girl was going to go and watch a movie about Dunkirk. They put Harry Styles in, and you know, when I went to see the Dunkirk film, half the cinema were teenage girls, and the reason they were there was because they were watching a film with Harry Styles in it. Very, very clever piece of casting. So you would do the same with a new, you know, with a new version of The Longest Day. I mean, I think really, if you're going to remake it in terms of it being Cornelius Ryan's book again, essentially similar narrative, what you really want to do is do a mini series, because it's very, very difficult to get all of that into a 3-hour film. And also movies are, you know, I hate to say it, but cinema's kind of dying, and that it kills me to say that because I love going to the cinema. But I went to the cinema the other night for a film's opening, and there were 10 of us in there, 10 of us at the 8 o'clock showing. So, you know, people are not people don't have money to go to the cinema now. If they're already paying for a Netflix account, you know, why should I go to the cinema? Here's a great picture of a casemate from Omaha Beach. I don't know which number it is. They're all WN something or other. And this is one with the gun still in it. And again, it's at an angle, but this is one of the ones that's more facing slightly towards the sea. But it was at a 45-degree angle, so that gun would be able to fire right down the beach.
Well, it is very interesting, Lance. And Darth Plato was talking about Troy, which is the next film that he and I are going to be reviewing on Thursday.
Yeah.
Certainly, you know, Brad Pitt did open my eyes during that film. I thought that was his best film that he's ever done. I loved that epic film. I thought it was beautiful. And that's another example of something that I was not expecting to see at that time period, but it was incredibly impressive. And I think that any kind of film that can stir interest in history and keep that conversation going, that's incredibly important. I think people are going to desire to see more things like this in the coming years, especially with the success of Oppenheimer this past year, making almost, has it made $1 billion? Is it 900 million? It's a lot of money.
It's made a lot of money. I mean, that was a good movie. I think I wasn't as impressed with it as a lot of other people were. I felt I don't like the fact that Christopher Nolan always has to mess with the timeline. I'm quite happy to see a story from point A, you know, to Z. I don't need to go from A to G, back to I, up to J, over to K. And the whole last hour of that film for me was really confusing, and it took me right out of the movie. I felt that the film should have ended with the bomb going off. And I found the last half hour just didn't work for me. So I wasn't I thought it was a good movie, but I didn't think it was the great film a lot of people thought it was. And hey, you know, that's just my opinion. This was one of the photos I was looking for. So I have walked out to sea to take this picture. So you can see I'm quite a distance from the bluffs. I'm on the sands at low tide. And you can see these are the kind of bluffs that they had to get up. And if you look at if I zoom in a bit, which I think I can do. Yeah. If you look at the bluffs at the bottom of the screen, look at how high those are on their own. So you've got kind of effectively a mini cliff that you've got to get up. And then you've got to get up this massive hill. And this was towards the eastern end of the beach. And I think just to the right of this, there was another casemate. And I think there's also one that you can't see that's hidden just in this section here. But I mean, so the movie didn't quite get that hill on Omaha Beach quite right. They made it, you know, when you got the bit where they blew through the wall, it's not really very high. It's so that bit was done much better in Saving Private Ryan, where, you know, they were really, when you got to the edge of the beach at the bottom of the cliffs, you couldn't get shot, but you couldn't move. And it was these small groups of men, just like in Saving Private Ryan, that gradually kind of fought their way up in little groups. And yeah, so, but that's the picture I was looking for.
Well, that's wonderful, Lance. I'm so glad you showed us all of these photos, and it was really a wonderful experience seeing all this. It was really very impressive.
Thanks very much. Right, well, we should probably wrap it up there because it's coming on for 3 hours, and I don't want to. I know you've got things to do, but just want to thank our for coming on. She runs Positive Fandom. Is it going to be the director's cut of Troy that you're going to watch?
I don't know. I have to ask Darth Plato what version he has, and that's the one we're going to watch. So maybe we can find that out afterwards, but I don't know which version yet.
I'm pretty sure he'll probably have the director's version. It's a lot better than the original version because there was, when I watched it at the cinema, I remember thinking, this film feels like there's scenes missing. And I just felt that about it. I felt the same when I watched Kingdom of Heaven. And they both came out not that far apart from each other. And they both had massive cuts insisted upon them by the studio, which later the directors restored. And the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven is 200 times better than the original release. Troy doesn't cover everything, but it is a much better film than the original. Much better. So I highly recommend that you do the director's cut if you can. What else have you got coming up on the Positive Fandom channel?
My Sunday brunch show on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. where I do all the parlay in the fandom.
Yeah.
Also, I'm doing other watch parties as well. Coming up, I got SEAL Team going to be doing a watch party of the last season of The Crown. Also,
that's coming up. That's being released soon, isn't it?
Yes, they haven't given a release date, but it's coming up this fall, they say. I did a watch party for the previous season of The Crown on my channel as well. Also, going to be reviewing SEAL Team, which is a show. I guess maybe it's in season 6.
Are you doing it from the very beginning of the?
I'm going to be doing the most recent season. I might go back to the beginning and watch all the episodes on the air, but I have to see. I'm also doing gaming on my channel as well. I'm probably going to be playing Alien Isolation or something like that, starting the weekend after next. And then, of course, on the Burr Network, as you guys know, I'm the creative content director there. So I have been bringing in people to do streams there on the channel as well. I'm reviewing The Wheel of Time with Stubble McShave on the channel. We're going to be wrapping up the final 2 episodes about a week or so from now. I've been working with Catherine Cook on reviewing the Ahsoka series there as well. Also Midnight Musings, which I do with Robert. On Friday, we did a show last night, which was amazing, and a lot more coming up. Darth Plato and I are going to be looking at Napoleon. If and when the movie gets released this fall, we'll be
I'm going to be doing a stream on Napoleon for sure.
And
right
then also more PGS reviews coming up. TCM has the second half of the William Friedkin tribute, which is going to be on Sunday in November. The Exorcist is one of the watch party movies, and that's going to wrap up the William Friedkin tribute. So there's a lot going on this fall. And Lance, it's been so much fun to be here today.
Oh, no, thanks. Well, look, I will try and you've got so many, but I'll try. I'm so sorry I couldn't make Hamburger Hill the other night. I'm packing out my week, and sometimes when I think I'm going to be free, I'm not, sadly. Yeah, count me in for anything on the Burnett Network if there's anything I'm ever suitable. I have got coming on the 17th of October. I have got my next industry interview. I may have another one before that. I'm waiting for confirmation on 2 different film directors, both of whom have made big movies. So I can't say anything more. I don't want to say who they are until I've got them locked. But I also have coming up, I'm going to be on the Critical Drinkers channel doing a Halloween special on The Thing. I think that's going to be on the 2nd of October. And then I've got an industry interview with Jeff Farley. Now, Jeff Farley was the main makeup artist on the Babylon 5 pilot and on the last 2 seasons of Babylon 5. So he's going to be a fantastic guest. He also worked on Demolition Man, and he's worked in makeup and special effects, and he's got about 150 credits as a makeup artist. I think about another 120 as a special effects artist. So I've already had a long chat with him. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Matthew Holmes and I are doing another double bill watch party. We've speculated on a couple of ideas. I don't think we made a final decision, so I won't say in case I get it wrong. Retro Nerd Girl has just popped in just as we're wrapping up. I do love Retro. I was on Retro's channel yesterday, but I arrived about 80 minutes in. I was very, very late. But she was still kind enough to let me come on for a little bit, and we talked about animation feature films, which was a lot of fun. And then I'm going to be doing my gaming stream. That will be this Tuesday, 9 p.m. UK time, where I'll be taking on Book 10 of Lone Wolf. I'll be doing the Dungeons of Torgar. And I've also got one of the Mad Max Choose Your Own Adventure books on its way. I've just ordered it from a secondhand shop online. That cost me 15 quid. It was a bit pricey. Freedom Fighter, which I've always wanted to play again. So anytime I'm doing one of these, if you want to come on and help me make the decisions, I do them at random different times, so it's not the same time.
I appreciate the open door. Thank you, Lance.
Open door is always there, and I'm a huge fan of The Crown. So if I am available when you do the watch party for the final season, I'd be very interested to do that. And of course, I lived through that era with the death of. That's going to cover the death of Diana, the car crash in Paris, all of that stuff. So we're really going to be in the era of the season, the movie of The Queen covered. And it's the same team. It's the same writer. It's the same production team. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to Darth Plato for lots of interesting factual comments. And a lot of my regulars who came in, David Macy and Keith, and great to have you there. Nice that a couple of RrrrMmm's friends came in as well. Really appreciate you being here. And Darth, I'm with you on that. Seasons 1 and 2 are the strongest of The Crown for sure. Last season was a little bit better. Season 3 was very weak, I think.
Thank you, Keith.
All right. So, guys, that's it from us. Remember what I always say. If there's a friend of yours that you haven't spoken to for a while and you think they might like a call, give them a ring instead of a text, because people like a phone call from time to time. especially people of my age. That's what I'm going to say. All right. We'll speak to you all again real soon.
Bye.